Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto beat a celestial dragon in One Piece harem. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by HaretaSora and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. An explosion that was the last thing he remembered happening before everything turned black. Gaia was the cause of it, he thinks. Something went wrong with the Sun and Moon Mark plan, he wasn't sure what, but it forced him to go with a plan B of sealing her inside him. And then there was nothing but white. He vaguely remembered her saying something before the explosion rang out. If he had to guess, it probably was about bringing them down with her, but his memory of it all was barely coherent. Now he wasn't sure what was happening other than his body was flying through the air and he was in immense pain. It was like his body was being ripped apart over and over and over again. Random words ran through his head as all this happened, words like unluck, untruth, unmove, unrepair, undraw, and many more that made utterly no sense to him, especially since some just didn't make sense due to the un in front of them. It wasn't anyone's voice, just words and images that popped up as he flew. He honestly wasn't sure how long he was flying, as with the constant intense pain it was impossible to even think. Eventually he crashed hard into something, but even then it didn't allow him to wake up or even escape the pain, as now he was seemingly buried under rubble and still somehow moving. Eventually, and thankfully, he grew numb to the pain, which allowed him some rest, as he could only wait until this stopped and he was able to awaken whenever that was. Somewhere in the second half of the Grand Line. Pops. We have a bit of a situation, Marco spoke up as he flew down from the crow's nest, turning his arms back from fiery phoenix wings that were the manifestation of his own devil fruit as he landed to alert his captain Edward Newgate, who was better known as Whitebeard. Seems we do, Whitebeard said with a laugh as he was able to see the issue even from his seat, the issue being a large meteor that was seemingly headed right their way. Think it's a devil fruit user attacking us? Marco asked as he peered out towards the meteor while Whitebeard got up from his seat. There is no one in these waters besides us, and no one would be so cowardly to attack us like this, Whitebeard said as he walked towards the edge of his ship, stepping his foot up on the railing and began to gather his devil fruit's power in his hand. He waited for a bit until it was closer before he threw a punch towards the meteor and launched a wave of quakes through the air. The effects were nearly instant, the meteor shattering as shards of rock exploded in every direction from a safe distance. Though, as the pieces fell into the sea and just as he was about to turn and sit back down, something instantly caught his eye. Someone was falling out of the rubble. Marco. Whitebeard yelled out with Marco already flying off towards the person, not needing to be told anything more. On it, Pops. Marco called out as he took off, weaving through the falling rubble and snatching up the boy who looked like a teenager before he fell into the water. As he made his way back to the Moby Dick, he did his best to land softly, Pops seemingly getting his nurses to get an area to lay him down on. As he laid him down, he couldn't help but wince at the kid's injuries as he looked like he had been through the ringer and then some, to the point he was surprised he was even alive. His limbs were mangled and torn up, completely missing his right arm and part of his right leg, and he was bleeding like crazy. The kid is really roughed up, Pop. I have no idea why he was in that meteor, but he's seriously torn up, Marco started to say before trailing off as they all watched as the teen started to heal and regenerate his missing limbs. Seems the kid has more to him than meets the eye, Whitebeard said with a smirk, motioning for his nurses to step back as the boy started to stir a bit. Naruto, Pav. As Naruto's eyes shot open, finding himself finally able to wake up and see again after so long, to say he was disoriented was an understatement. Looking around a bit, he found himself on what seemed to be the deck of a huge ship with the tallest man he had ever seen with a massive white mustache a few yards away, with a blonde-haired man and two nurses by his side. The sight of the man startled Naruto, getting him to try and get away from the man, but as he tried, he fell on his face with his eyes widening as he realized why. His arm was regrowing from his elbow down. He wanted to scream at the sight, but honestly he couldn't bring himself to due to being beyond dumbfounded at the insanity of his arm, regenerating bone, muscle, and skin, before he gave his new hand a careful and wary squeeze. I take it by the look on your face that this is something new to you? The blonde man beside the massive man asked as he walked over to him while the other man just silently watching. Why yeah, very new to me, Naruto said, his voice hoarse and rough after not being used for so long. I mean, I once healed up a hole in my chest when I was a kid, but I had help with that, and I don't have that help anymore, he told him, instinctively putting his hand over his stomach as he referred to Kurama. He didn't feel inside him anymore, in fact he didn't feel any of his own chakra at all. Though it somewhat didn't surprise him given the explosion. Who are you two? Naruto asked, his voice still weak but still wanted to know as he was a bit cautious and curious about the identities of whose ship he was on. I'm Naruto Uzumaki by the way, he quickly added, realizing it might be best to introduce himself first before asking names of a massive man who could probably squash him underfoot. I'm Edward Newgate, but you can call me Whitebeard as it is what I am known most by, while that is Marco, a son of mine. Whitebeard introduced with Marco giving a little salute as he sat on the armrest of what Naruto figured to be Whitebeard's seat, given how huge it was. We are pirates in these parts but don't worry, we aren't the violent kind unless you attack us first, he assured him, and, from what Naruto's gut told him, he felt he didn't need to worry really. I know it's probably jarring for you, but I need to know, why were you in that meteor? Marco asked, seemingly unable to hold back the question he's had for any longer, which got a slight side eye from Whitebeard, while Naruto looked at Marco in confusion. What? I was in a what? Naruto asked, completely confused as Whitebeard nodded while he sat back down in his chair. A meteor was heading our way and after I broke it you fell out of the rubble that was falling into the ocean before Marco caught you and brought you to the ship, Whitebeard explained as Naruto groaned a bit as he sat up more. Last thing I remember was fighting that rabbit granny and she had killed my friend and I had to, Naruto started to say before he trailed off, having a bit of trouble remembering fully. Why don't you explain things from the beginning, that might help recall what happened near the end, Whitebeard suggested, seeing the kid was having issues and figured it'd be easier for all of them this way. Okay, I'll try my best, Naruto said as he thought a bit about where to start before he decided to start at the beginning. It was a bit difficult to explain, but he did his best explaining Obito's war declaration, the Biju, his role in it, and then Kagaya's involvement in it and her abilities at the end. He could see Marco was finding it hard to believe, but Whitebeard seemed to at least be taking it in with an expression Naruto wasn't able to read whatsoever. By recalling everything he was able to remember the explosion when he tried to seal Kagaya away and how he felt like he had been sent flying and getting torn up by something before crashing into what he now figured to be the meteor possibly. He also mentioned the words that ran through his mind as he flew, all of which he could remember clear as day, as if recalling his birthday or his own name, which was a bit odd given he only heard them once. If anything even remotely like that happened here it wouldn't go unnoticed. Also, given what you've said of this Kagaya's powers and how you arrived, I'll be honest as there is no other way to explain it, I imagine you came from a completely different world, Whitebeard told him as he leaned back in his chair and looked Naruto in the eyes, only able to imagine how being told something like that must feel. Boy Pops, you can't be seriously buying all that. He can't even do any of the things he claimed, Marco started to say before Whitebeard cut him off by hitting his fist on the armrest. Marco, look at him and tell me he's lying, then Whitebeard asked him, motioning over to Naruto as they both saw just how visibly distraught he was, most likely from realizing how the thought of being from another world might actually be right and what it might mean for everyone he left behind. Look, Naruto, I can't offer you a way back and I'm sorry about that, but I can offer to let you stay on my ship. It wouldn't be remotely fair to toss you out in a world you know absolutely nothing about, Whitebeard offered, getting Naruto to look up at him and wipe a few tears that were building up in the corners of his eyes, which neither shamed him for. Now, it doesn't need to be permanent as I'm sure eventually you'll want to set out on your own, but, until then, I'll help you figure out what those words you heard mean, Whitebeard told him, confusing Naruto a bit before he bumped Marco a bit to get his attention. Go get something for him to write the names down, he told him, getting Marco to quickly hurry off. You think the words mean something? Naruto asked as Whitebeard leaned forward and nodded. One of the words you heard was undead, right? He asked, getting a nod before Whitebeard pointed to Naruto's limbs as Marco quickly returned with a notepad and a pen. Then that could explain how you are now able to regrow your limbs, and if that is the case, then I'm going to help you figure out what these other words can let you do, he explained, as Naruto could only look at him in confusion. Don't get me wrong, I'm insanely grateful that you are doing all this for me, but why? You literally just met me. Why offer to help me out so much beyond just letting me live on your ship in exchange for me helping out with like chores and whatnot? Obviously since I'm not about to sit on my ass, Naruto asked him, seriously confused why this man was doing this much for him out of the blue, for seemingly nothing other than a chore hand in exchange. His question seemed to be funny a bit, causing Whitebeard to let out a loud and rather unique sounding laugh. I have a habit of helping out those with nowhere to go, whether it be orphans, people down on their luck, or anyone who genuinely wants to join, so helping out someone with nowhere to go is natural to me. Plus helping you figure yourself out will help you survive longer in this new world, so I don't see any issue with it, Whitebeard explained, it being Naruto's turn to laugh a bit as he smiled at Whitebeard. Seems I got lucky being found by you, Naruto said as he pushed himself to stand up before walking towards Whitebeard. You've got yourself a deal, Whitebeard, he said, getting a smile from the man before they shook hands, this being the start of Naruto's new life in this new world. A little over 2-year time skip. Come on kid. You can do better than that. Whitebeard yelled out as Naruto struggled against two other members of Whitebeard's crew, Jozu and Vista. I am. These things aren't so simple to figure out. I don't even know if the one I'm trying for is a combat skill. Naruto yelled out as he dodged Josu's charge, only to have his head sliced off by Vista, him groaning as he made his body leap back to give it enough time to regrow his head. Over the last few years Whitebeard had stuck true to his promise of helping Naruto figure out his powers. Because of his help, he had roughly figured out a bit over a dozen of his powers and was working on mastering them and figuring out more of them as each day passed. It turned out his powers in the simplest explanation negated something of the world either towards him or in the world around him. Undead, the one he had from the very beginning, negated anything pertaining to his death, whether it be severed limbs, decapitation, drowning, or burns, you name it, and it healed him, though he still felt all the pain. Thankfully that period of time where he was being torn apart over and over helped him build up a massive pain tolerance, which allowed him to be trained into the ground and still get up at the end. And boy did he need it with Whitebeard as a teacher. To say Whitebeard was a strict and harsh teacher was a severe understatement. The man pushed him so hard to where if he couldn't die, he felt he would have by now. Though honestly he preferred it this way given how lax his teachers were in the past. With these insane abilities he had to figure out he didn't need any kind of coddling, especially since that wasn't all he was learning. Apparently this world had some power called Haki that could be awakened in others and, well, he wasn't born in this world. Whitebeard was working to teach him as he felt he had the potential to use all three forms of it, which he ended up being correct for at least two of them, the third being something he had to awaken on his own, since it couldn't be taught, but just learning the two others was difficult, especially learning it alongside his other powers. We all know you are someone who learns best by being thrown into the deep end and figuring things out by doing. So, just like with most of the other abilities of yours, we aren't holding back. Whitebeard told him as he sat of a massive stump from a tree he chopped down on an uninhabited island, which were often the place where they trained, since it was too dangerous to do it on the Moby Dick, one part due to any marines who might be watching, and another part due to his powers, sometimes being dangerous to the area around him. You have to think what the base word means, Naruto, and how would you negate such a concept, Vista told him, trying to help him a bit as the man rushed at him, Naruto barely able to fend him off before Josu charged at him again with his diamond paramecia active again. Easy for you to say, you aren't trying to negate the rules of the world, Naruto grumbled as he quickly avoided Josu by slicing off his feet with the standard sword he was given for training and using the blood to propel himself into the air as he continued trying to get his head around the current power he was working on. Though, as much as he tried and tried, the rest of the training went poorly if he was being honest, ending with it now being the afternoon with Naruto lying on the floor beside Whitebeard with a frown as he stared up at the man while everyone was busy putting their stuff back on the ship. Don't let things get to you, no one would have an easy time with your powers, and in 2 years you've been making damn fine progress with them and your Haki. You're doing a damn fine job, son, he assured him as he held out his hand towards him to help him up, showing even while being a rough teacher, he was still a very kind man. Thanks, I promise I'm not trying to waste your time, Naruto grumbled a bit, at times feeling a bit bad when he didn't make progress despite his teachers and all the time Whitebeard was putting into him. You idiot, you aren't wasting my time, Whitebeard said with an annoyed look on his face before it softened up and he put his hand on his shoulder. I've told you before, you get stronger every day, which makes it worth it. You are my investment from the moment we started unlocking your powers. I knew that you were the one I wanted to have become the king of the pirates. Well, that but mainly due to that ridiculous dream of yours, he said with a smirk as he gave Naruto's back a hard pat that knocked him over. Over the years, other than training, Whitebeard and others had also spent time teaching him a good deal about the world he was now part of, from devil fruits, the marines, celestial dragons, 7 warlords, 4 emperors, pirate king, to the One Piece and so much more. It did surprise him when he learned that he was traveling alongside one of the 4 strongest pirates in the world, and even more that the man wanted to elevate him into becoming the next king of the pirates. Whitebeard's goal was known to no one else beside them, and Marco and personally it floored Naruto a bit when Whitebeard suddenly told him. The man first told him it a few days after Naruto had told him his new dream for this world, given he couldn't very well be Hokage anymore. More or less he had decided to continue his dream of peace in this world, but also with something else included alongside it, something he figured could also only be possible if he became the Pirate King. When telling others his dream, he stuck with his peace dream, deciding to keep the other part a bit of a personal thing, only ever telling it to Marco, Whitebeard, and one other division commander, as when he did tell Whitebeard about the additional part, well, the man laughed. Though thankfully it wasn't in a "you're stupid" way, but more in "I can't believe it" way that he later described, as apparently he had heard this dream elsewhere before. That kind of made him want to keep it private a bit more, given the look in his eyes was like he was reminiscing about an old friend. I still don't get why you want me when you are the strongest man in the world and the closest to that title. Between the high expectations you have in me and that D initial you say you can feel in me, I don't quite get it, Naruto groaned out as he pushed himself back onto his feet. You'll understand when you go out on your own journey and see more of the world for yourself, Whitebeard cryptically told him with a look in his eyes that made it clear that he knew what he was talking about. Now come on son, we best be moving before the Marines try anything, he told him, standing up and motioning for him to follow. Over the last two, his relationship with the man who had pretty much saved him had changed considerably as well. It was odd to say, especially given he had met his revived father, but Whitebeard had become a real father figure to him and it just felt right. Though it wasn't just Whitebeard, the man's whole crew was his family. Personally, he liked it as it really helped make him feel welcomed and a bit at home around them all. It was hard to explain, but he was happy with it. Did training go poorly today as well? A loud voice asked out with a boisterous and unique laugh as Naruto and Whitebeard returned to the Moby Dick to see another crew member, Marshal D, Teach, sitting down and relaxing with other crew members on the deck of the ship. It didn't go poorly, I'm slowly becoming stronger soon, I should be able to go out on runs with everyone else, Naruto said with a flat look, not quite liking the feel that Teach gave off since something about the man made his instincts scream for him to be wary of. The Teach and everyone else who weren't division commanders, Whitebeard and them, were just giving him a fast-track training regimen to get him up to snuff with the rest of them. Whitebeard didn't want his powers leaking out into the world, especially the Marines, until Naruto was able to take care of himself. Especially since Whitebeard knew the second his undead ability became known to the world, he'd undoubtedly be hounded by the Marines and everyone else who wanted it for themselves or to potentially experiment on him. Personally, I feel it'll be a good while before you get there, kid. You were like a newborn babe not too long ago and just now starting to get on new recruit level, Teach said with a massive smirk before someone nearby smacked him upside the head. That's not true, Naruto is plenty strong, Teach, a familiar voice spoke out as the figure moved over to sit down on the armrest of Whitebeard's seat while Teach grumbled, looking more annoyed at being called out than apologetic. The figure was the division commander of the 2nd Division, Portgas D. Ace, who other than Marco was the division commander he was closest to and considered a good friend. Ace was actually someone he considered to almost be like a brother to him, especially given how much they butted heads a bit after he joined. Ace was a good guy, but he was a bit hard-headed at times, unlike some of the other commanders. He didn't quite welcome Naruto right away and picked a fight to test him. He even gave him a handicap of not using his Loja's intangibility, though he'd still use its powers, which happened to be fire. Though it turned out, due to Ace, he was able to figure out another power of his, namely Unburn, which negated anything regarding burning or combustion, which was a perfect counter to his Loja, and let Naruto defeat him. After the fight, the two hit it off swimmingly and he was able to get past Ace's wall. He kept around himself a bit with new people and really get close to him over the years to the point he was the sole person other than Marco and Whitebeard who knew everything about him. Just cause he beat you doesn't mean he's anywhere close to being on the level of the other crew members, Teach barked back since his and Ace's fight was known to everyone, although no one knew what happened during it. Stuff it, Teach, as the other commanders and I voted to approve him for a run we're getting set up for, Ace said, with a glare at the large-bellied man as Naruto looked at him and then over to Whitebeard in shock. Wait, really? Naruto asked, surprised as he thought he was still a bit away from going on them, considering he was still a rookie when it came to hockey and still had a bit over a dozen powers left to unlock. Way to ruin the surprise, Ace, Whitebeard said with a flat look as he went over to his seat and got hooked up to his medical equipment. Sorry Pops, I'm just tired of people doubting Naruto and it's hard to hold back around since he's been training non-stop for a bit over 2 years. We're all excited to see how he does, Ace apologized with an apologetic smile before Whitebeard sighed but nodded as he understood and knew how they felt since he too wanted to see how Naruto would fare. Seriously? I know you are babying the kid, but this is ridiculous. Teach yelled out as he looked over to Whitebeard with a look that showed he felt this was a stupid decision. Tell me, Teach, have you been watching over his training and know his current strength? Whitebeard asked, getting only silence from the man since he couldn't answer since it was obvious. Then if I feel he can handle things then that means he can, he said, essentially putting his foot down and ending discussion on the matter before looking over to Naruto, getting his attention. You'll be heading out tomorrow morning, early, so get your things together, Whitebeard said as Naruto nodded before someone rushed up from below decks. Bad news, Pops. They are speeding things up. A crew member yelled out as they ran over with a black transponder snail which was used for wiretaps before handing it to Whitebeard, who held it close to his ear so he could hear what was being said. And by the change in his expression, he definitely wasn't happy about what he heard. Change of plans, Naruto, get your stuff together now as you're leaving right away. Everyone I assigned to the Captivity archipelago run, go get ready to leave now. He ordered, his voice loud for everyone to hear as he slammed his fist down on the armrest of his chair. Naruto, knowing this wasn't a time to ask questions or waste time, and quickly hurried down to his cabin. As he got in his cabin he was quick to grab everything he thought he needed but paused for a moment as he looked himself over in the mirror. Over the years, with him now being 19, he had grown quite a bit. He had rocketed up from 5'4" to a respectable 6'2" due to Pops being very strict about a good diet and he had become a bit more muscular, but not overly so. He had even gotten himself a few tattoos. The first was all the symbols of the hidden villages and the shinobi alliance symbol listed down his right bicep. It was there to remind him of where he came from and so he never forgot them. The other, on his other arm in the same location, was a black bone cross with a skull in the center that had a mustache exactly like the Whitebeard Jolly Roger to represent where he was now and what he had to fight for in this new world. For clothing he tended to be shirtless to allow for better use of undead, only really wearing jackets or cloaks on his shoulders at times, a pair of loose black pants tied with an orange sash, and a pair of wooden two-toothed Jetta sandals. Not wanting to take too long, he quickly grabbed his bag that had his sword handle poking out of it before heading up to the deck again. It seemed he wasn't the last one there, the others quickly getting a medium-sized ship ready to drop off the side of Moby Dick Naruto, noticing it was covered in a weird film. It's been coated, we've had it coated for the last few days in preparation, as to get to where you'll need to go, you'll have to go under the red line, Whitebeard said, seemingly reading his expression and answering his question before he even asked it, something Whitebeard excelled at, especially with him. Though we won't be dropping by Fishman Island, no time as what we're off to do has a small window of time to get done, someone explained before Naruto watched as Namor walked over to the railing of the coated ship, seemingly the one in charge of this run. Namor was the commander of Whitebeard's 8th Division and a shark fisherman which, when he first started to learn about the world, was seriously interesting. The idea of fishmen and mermaids was fantasy in his world, although Kisum pushed it a bit and he had somewhat pestered Namor and another fisherman who frequented the Moby Dick when he first met them to learn more about them and their race. Thankfully they didn't seem to mind and Namor actually smiled a bit when they talked. Personally, he found the discrimination towards fishmen to be utterly stupid, but, sadly, humans will be humans towards things they don't understand or were different from them. If anything, it just gave him another thing to strive towards with his dream. Got it, I'll see it myself one day, so it's no worries, Naruto said with a smile as he didn't mind as he hopped up onto the ship before catching a bundle of cloth bound in twine from Whitebeard. Wear that, listen to Namor, and try to stay out of trouble, Whitebeard told him, the look in his eyes showing he was serious as Naruto nodded before Ace walked over and held out his fist. Stay safe out there and try not to be too much of a troublemaker, Ace warned, showing a bit of his worry, while also teasing Naruto a bit as they bumped fists. I'll do my best, he told him with a smile, getting a smirk from Ace before he stepped back and allowed the ship to drop. Once on the water they didn't waste any time heading off, the paddles of the boat already turning as Naruto untied the bundle to reveal it was a large black hooded cloak. He wants to make sure you won't get noticed by the Marines, to allow you to start your own journey without too many issues, Namor explained as Naruto put on the cloak, already figuring that was the case, as Whitebeard knew eventually that he wanted to set off on his own. Though that wasn't to say he particularly liked it, but he did understand it. Plus lets me keep my powers a bit more hidden, Naruto asked, getting a nod from Namor as he patted him on the back. Though that isn't to say you can't use them, Pops gave you the okay to use whatever you need, although we're attempting to be a bit under the radar, well, as under the radar as a Whitebeard crew can be, he said with a bit of a sigh, since they were apparently under watch by several marine ships, wherever they went, not enough to see faces on deck, but just to get general ideas of where they were going. I'll try my best to keep things subtle, but what exactly is the mission? Naruto asked since they had pretty much been rushed to get going, so nothing had been explained, at least not to him. We're essentially rescuing some mermaids who got captured and are being sold at a human auction house, Namor explained, his tone becoming pure venom at the end as he clenched his fists in a mix of anger and disgust, a mix of emotions Naruto also shared at the mention of such a place. The idea of such a place and such a practice seriously disgusted Naruto, and these celestial dragons, although he obviously had never met one yet, sounded equally disgusting from everything he heard about them. And they are being sold sooner than expected? Naruto asked as Namor nodded. We thought it'd take longer for the traders to return to the Sabati archipelago, but not only have they gotten back faster, but they plan to sell the mermaids off first thing in the morning, so we have to rush to make things faster, hence why Pops brought us as close to the red line as he could, Namor explained, since being a Yonko Whitebeard tended to stay away from the red line, since it tended to get the Marines in a bit of a panic due to Mary Geo Ice being on top of it. We'll be traveling through the night, but are going to be up and moving the second we reach the other side, so be prepared, Namor said to him and everyone else around, getting nods from them all, as they understood the small window of time they had. Then I'm going to try and work on figuring things out a bit, Naruto told him, referencing his powers as he pulled out a scroll from his bag, which was where he kept all his notes on his powers, choosing a scroll due to a bit of nostalgia of back home. Plus I kind of want to keep the sites under the red line a secret for the time being, until I get there myself, he added with a smile, Namor nodding with a smirk of his own. "We'll call you if we need you, so don't worry," Namor assured him, allowing him to head below deck to find an empty cabin to claim. Well, better get started, he thought to himself as he plopped down on the floor and fished around in his bag for the scroll before activating unsleep, which completely negated his need for sleep while using it. It only made sense to use it while traveling overnight to ensure he'd be ready when they arrived, and it'd give him full focus to look over everything. It also helped time fly by as Namor came to get him before he knew it as they had arrived, him only taking his sword and a small pouch from the bag of stuff he brought with him, as it was all he really needed while out in the field. The sword was his main weapon and, despite not really being a swordsman in the past, he picked it up rather well after unlocking more of his powers, and Whitebeard had seemingly gone out of his way to find it for him. Its name was Kurikara-1, which apparently was the name of a dragon from mythology. It was one of the 21 great grade blade, according to Whitebeard, with a golden colored octagonal guard, a black handle, and a golden cap at the end that had unbreakable carved into it in kanji, since the sword literally was unbreakable. Well, it took him a bit to figure out how to use it, allowed him to make anything he completed unbreakable and indestructible. He personally didn't need to fully make every part of whatever he was intending to be unbreakable, as, with testing, they learned it worked with anything he completed. So, after Whitebeard found the sword, they took it apart and let him put it back together to make it truly an unbreakable blade. It was a very useful skill for arming some of the division commanders and others, but, given how it varied a bit on whatever he was attempting to turn unbreakable, they always tested things out a good deal before getting to the point where they felt they could rely on it in the field. "So? What's the game plan?" Naruto asked, flipping up the large hood of his cloak to hide his face and slipping his sword onto his waist as he came up onto the deck of the ship while everyone was getting ready to get off the ship. "It's going to be two-sided. We are going to be heading in through the back to get the keys to the slave collars and free the slaves, while another group will be going into the audience to waste time by bidding, but since you are the only member that the Marines don't know about, this'll be your job," Namor explained as Whitebeard's crew was well known and documented, with Naruto being the only exception since he hasn't gone on runs yet, and Whitebeard made sure he stayed out of view of the Marines. "And when a commotion starts from your actions in the back of it?" Naruto asked, knowing they wouldn't just sit around as slaves were being freed. "When or if that happens, then that is your cue to attack the guards and get focus on you, as that is a bit of trouble Pops has allowed you to cause," he instructed as Naruto nodded, understanding that this was more a covert thing until the moment their actions were noticed. "The auction house is in Grove 1, we'll see you there," Namor told him as Naruto nodded, noticing they were ready to go, so that meant it was time for him to head off as well. "I'll try my best to keep things simple, as the last thing we need is for my powers to be revealed to others. I'll go on ahead since I can't be seen with you all," Naruto told them as he closed his eyes and activated Unseen, which rendered him and his clothes invisible as long as his eyes were closed, before leaping over the railing of the ship and onto the island they were at. Unseen made navigating a bit of a pain in the ass, and personally he wasn't sure if he was using the power correctly, something feeling off about it, but he had trained enough to be able to move around a bit, at least until he felt he was far enough away from the ship to allow him to deactivate it. As he made his way through the groves, he was able to see just how a bit crazy the island was, although, from what he could tell, the island wasn't an island and more just a group of these odd trees that created odd bubbles. People on the island were just as crazy with the pirates and Marines on the island. But, as he arrived at the human auction house and headed in, all he felt was disgust and rage at what he knew happened here. As he sat down in one of the many rows of seats that made this feel like some sort of auditorium, he did his best to stay calm, thankful that his hood covered his face a bit, otherwise his glare would probably make him stand out a bit more than he already did with his cloak. Though the talk he overheard around him about who they were going to buy or hoping that a certain race would be up for sale only made his blood boil even more. All he could do was take deep breaths and grip his sword sheath tightly to somewhat calm himself, although it was more just to keep himself from fighting before it was his time. As he waited, he noticed some commotion behind him, wondering if that was the cue, only to see some weird guy in a weird white outfit, weird hair that was sticking straight up with two buns at the top of it, and a weird bubble around his head. What made him angry was how he was sitting on a big chair on the back of a man who was crawling on his arms and knees and wearing only a pair of black pants, a black hooded mask to completely hide his face, and a big iron collar around his neck. Celestial dragon, Naruto thought as he clenched his fist and turned away, knowing that looking at the sight would only upset him more. He seriously just wanted Namor to begin so he could get out of here, but also figuring the auction probably needed to begin for the guards in the back entrance to lessen up a bit. "Welcome everyone," someone announced over the speakers as a man in a black suit walked out to address the crowd with a microphone in hand. "Today we have something very special up for auction. I know we should save it for last but, with the esteemed Saint Jalmak here, we wouldn't dare waste his time when we heard he was blessing us with his presence, the man praised, confirming that the man was a celestial dragon, despite his ridiculous outfit. Today we start the auction with a striped beakfish mermaid. One of the many mermaids we were able to obtain. He declared, the curtains behind him parting to reveal a mermaid trapped in a massive glass fishbowl that had a metal lid. This was the first time Naruto had ever seen a mermaid and, honestly, he wished it had been on better terms than in an auction house with how she looked. The woman looked utterly terrified with a metal collar around her neck that was attached to the lid of the bowl by several feet of chain, while her hands were shackled and chained to each other as well. She was undeniably beautiful with creamy white skin, cute freckles on her cheeks, brown eyes, long wavy black hair that had 2 pigtails. She wore a black and white striped bikini that matched her black and white striped fishtail. Crap, she's probably one of the reasons we are here and they're already starting on selling the mermaids, Naruto thought with a frown, as he knew how close Whitebeard was with Fishman Island since it was one of his territories. I can't start attacking yet until I know they have started in the back of this massive place, gotta waste time for them, Naruto thought as the bidding started. 500 million berries. A male's voice yelled out, Naruto turning to see it was the celestial dragon, Naruto figuring out the only real way he could give the others time, as much as he hated the thought of it, was to bid on the mermaid. 600 million. Naruto yelled out, getting gasps of surprise from others since, when the celestial dragon made their bid, everyone pretty much had gone quiet, with a few murmurs he heard, basically showing no one dared to bid against them. And from the glare he was able to see as he looked behind him towards the celestial dragon, they weren't happy. 700 million berries. They called out, still glaring at him as Naruto raised his hand again. 800 million. He called out only to have a gunshot ring out, the bullet missing his arm by a few feet. Seemed celestial dragons had shit aim and definitely didn't like being bid against. How dare you, an insolent commoner, interfere with the desires of a celestial dragon. Jalmak yelled out as people started to clear the area around him a bit. That is my property. My slave. I won't accept anyone denying what I declare to be mine. He continued to yell as he continued to fire off shots. Your property? Your slave. She is a living person, you disgusting monster. People aren't cattle, no matter how powerful anyone might be. Naruto yelled out as he glared at the man, smirking a bit as he heard fights going behind the stage, meaning Namor and the others had begun. You dare speak to a celestial dragon in such a way. We descended from the creators of the world. You'll see what happens when you oppose us. Jalmak declared, putting his gun in his pocket again before being handed what looked like a large rifle-style bazooka that had a scope attached before aiming it towards the mermaid. If I can't have her then you can't either. He yelled out as he fired, everyone bracing themselves for the sound of glass exploding only for no such sound to ring out, them all turning to see that Jalmak's shot had hit Naruto's back instead as he had ran to block the shot without a second thought. Naruto was thankful for a few things right now if he was being honest. First was him being undead to survive such a tactic, second being that this cloak seemingly regenerated with him most likely due to it being composed of skin cells and hair, and lastly that the mermaid's tank hadn't shattered from the force of the explosion. It seemed like only a bit of the top had been broken off, allowing her to probably hear everything that was going on. Hey, don't worry, I'm fine, Naruto told the mermaid with a smile as he put his hand on her bowl to assure her that he was fine due to the worried look on her face. You'll be freed soon, I promise, he assured her again before he turned back around to face Jalmak and started to walk towards him, his anger growing stronger with each step. Saint, stop right there, you idiot. Don't you know what will happen if you anger me? Jalmak yelled as he fired his bazooka at Naruto again, though it didn't stop him in the slightest as he continued on towards the celestial dragon. He was thankful though that his cloak hid his injuries and regeneration, otherwise things would get a bit more annoying. I couldn't give a shit who or what you are, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't stop you, Naruto told him as Jalmak ditched his bazooka and brought back out his pistol, this time some of the shots actually hitting due to how close they were. Though he didn't have it for long before Naruto grabbed him by the collar of his stupid outfit and lifted him up, popping the bubble around his head, which seemed to elicit some shocked gasps and the sounds of suits of armor running his way, most likely the celestial dragon's bodyguards, though he seriously didn't care. You truly are a despicable creature, you know that. Seeing people as property and willing to kill just because you don't get your way utterly disgusts me. You seriously don't even deserve being counted as a person, Naruto growled out, gripping his collar tighter and making it harder for the man to breathe as his rage towards the man boiled over, with the sound of bodies falling over around them coming shortly after. A quick look to his sides let him see that those who had still stuck around due to fear of what was happening were now unconscious and foaming at the mouth. It made it clear what had happened, as he had seen this before with Pops. Seems like he had unlocked Conqueror's Hockey and unconsciously blasted it out. Thankfully the mermaid hadn't been affected, though neither had the celestial dragon, probably due to his lack of control of the new hockey in the latter's case. He just hoped no one on Namor's crew had passed out. Why are you doing this? I have done nothing wrong. This is my right. Why you are the one being a CR criminal here. Jalmak declared as he tried to grab Naruto's arm to stop him, or at least allow him to breathe a bit easier, to no avail. Wow, you really believe that, don't you? Naruto asked as he pulled Jalmak in closer and tightened his grip so he'd still have trouble breathing. You see the world as your playground and everyone as ants that you can kill without a care in the world, but in reality you are worse than heartless, truly just a pure monster. You are soulless and disgusting, Naruto told him, his voice dripping in venom as he truly found himself disgusted by the celestial dragon. Naruto had come across villains in the past, but even then, with cases like Obito and Nagato, they were manipulated into their dark path. This man though was just pure evil, utterly selfish, petty, and monstrous for no good reason other than because they had the power and standing to let them do whatever they want. The more he thought about it, the more his desire to fix this world grew. Saint, stop this while you still can. The second you put your hand on me, it triggered a call to bring an Admiral here. Why, you're going to die, but if you want, I can look the other way if you unhand me and give me my mermaid, Jalmak hissed out before Naruto cut him off by letting go of his collar and quickly grabbing him directly by the throat and choking him out to silence him. I literally don't care about my safety, but I'd never be able to live with myself if I let you run off with her or leave here to endanger others in the future, he told the man as he clenched his fist until his knuckles were pure white and any harder would most likely break his hand. You truly aren't worthy of the life you've been given, rot in hell. Naruto hissed out as he threw a punch, not holding back whatsoever, which even without making contact the shockwave of the punch alone caused was enough to blow a hole through Jalmak's chest. Well, that's gonna cause a mess, Namor spoke out, having arrived onto the stage, though Naruto wasn't exactly sure when due to his focus having been elsewhere. I'd say I'm sorry, but that'd be lying. That person was a monster, but I'll admit I went a bit far, Naruto muttered as he turned around to see Namor unlocking the mermaid's collar and shackles. I didn't knock anyone out back there, did I? He asked, getting a chuckle from Namor. A few almost passed out, but your lack of focus didn't make it nearly as strong as Pop's hockey, so don't worry, Namor assured him as he helped the mermaid get out of her bowl, having a bubble prepared for her. But we have an admiral coming our way, you have a plan for that? He asked as Naruto nodded and patted his chest. Simple, I'll stay behind and catch up with you guys later on the other side of the red line, though it won't be going under, so sadly, I still won't be able to see Fishman Island, he said with a sigh before waving it off as it wasn't important really. The Admiral is going to be focused on me, as are all the Marines outside. The last thing I want is for Pops to get caught up in stuff due to me losing my temper, so just leave me behind to deal with the consequences of my actions, he told Namor, lifting his hood a bit so he could look Namor in his eyes to show he was serious. If it was anyone else suggesting that I chew them out for being stupid and suicidal, but, even with you, I'm tempted to do the same, despite knowing you'll be fine, Namor said before letting out a long sigh as he shook his head. Fine, we'll retreat quickly and work on returning what slaves we can back to their homes as best we can. I'll tell Pops a bit about what happened, but it's up to you to apologize for everything, he told him with Naruto nodding as he expected that much. Wait, we can't leave him here, the mermaid called out as Namor tried to lead her away, struggling as he held onto her arm a bit. It's okay, miss, I'll be fine, Naruto told her as he left his hood raised up a bit so she could see his face. My focus is on allowing you guys to escape safely, and that can only be done if I stay behind. I can survive an admiral and escape easily enough once you guys have submerged and made your way down, so I'll be fine, but you guys seriously need to go now, he told her expression showing she was still uneasy about leaving him behind before relaxing a bit, although she still didn't look all too happy about leaving him behind. Oh okay, but when you do come to Fishman Island in the future, come to the Mermaid Cafe and ask for Ishili, I'll be waiting for you, she told him before finally letting Namor guide her away. As Naruto made his way towards the exit, passing by a few crew members of Namor's who were freeing the slaves Jalmak came in with before quickly leaving, Naruto fixed his hood and started to think how he'd go about fighting the Marines outside. He knew he couldn't really use anything flashy, if anything he was limited to a small few of his powers. He didn't want to display much of what he could do with undead, other than letting it heal bullet wounds without the Marines noticing, and with his other stuff, he'd have to be careful with how he used them, or who he used them on, given the effects of some of them. Though, as he walked out of the auction house, it seemed he didn't have to wait for the Admiral to show up, as they were waiting for him at the front of the encirclement of Marines that had surrounded the building. The Admiral he ended up getting was Borsellino, who was better known as Kizaru. He wore a flashy two-toned yellow pinstripe suit, a pair of sunglasses, and his Admiral cloak resting on his shoulders. He knew what the man could do as Whitebeard had told him all about the Admirals and their fruits. If he was being honest, he would have preferred Akainu, since he could deal with him better due to an ability of his being a perfect counter to him. Though it didn't surprise him that they chose him, not many could flee him, which was something he felt they definitely didn't want, since he did kill a celestial dragon. It was a sucker's bet to say they wanted him captured to be gruesomely tortured atop the red line and made a slave. But that was easier said than done. "So, I take it I'm in trouble?" Naruto asked as he kept his eyes trained on Kizaru, knowing how fast the man could be with his light loja. One blink was all that was needed to send him flying when Kizaru decided to attack. He somewhat was also buying time a bit, although he knew Namor and the others were safely leaving, since he could feel their presence getting further and further away. If he had to guess, they had probably dug a hole into the building, which was easy since the ground below them was mainly leaves. They probably changed to this plan to try and keep things as calm as they could, or due to there being too many guards in the back to go in without potentially endangering the slaves. Personally, he wanted to use as much time as he could to ensure they had submerged before fleeing, though that might take him a bit longer to do. "You must really be a greenhorn to do something as stupid as killing a celestial dragon," Kizaru droned out, his speech being just as slow-paced as Pops told him. Well, it was hard to hold back with how disgusting and vile they were. "Personally, I didn't intend to punch a hole through them, but my anger channeled a bit too much strength, I guess," Naruto told him with a shrug of his shoulders, as Kizaru slowly widened his eyes before shaking his head in slight exasperation. "Just let yourself be captured, it would make my job much easier," Kizaru said with a sigh before nodding, seemingly being the cue for the Marines to fire their weapons in an attempt to take him down without Kizaru needing to fight. Defending against the bullets, cannonballs, and bazooka rounds was more than easy to do without even lifting a finger with the help of Unchange. Unchange was one of his major defensive abilities as it allowed him to negate and prevent the state of objects from being changed. He primarily used it to turn the air into an indestructible barrier around him, and with a lot of training, he learned how to be able to make tendril-like arms and hands. Those hands were what allowed him to grab cannonballs and bazooka rounds mid-air and throw them back at the Marines, while the barrier dome around him deflected all bullets. "Is that all you've got? Cause if so I might as well leave," Naruto said with a smirk which only slightly faltered as Kizaru pointed towards him. Well, he used to be able to dodge light-speed attacks in the past, like with Madara's attack back during the war, he had trouble doing that now, since he lacked 6 paths in jutsu which amplified his senses. Which explained how he was getting hit by several laser beams in spots like his knees and shoulders. Plus, to make matters worse, Kizaru just happened to have the perfect counter to Unchange, as light was the one thing that could pass through his air barriers, hence why he would have preferred a different Admiral. "Really not holding much back, going straight for the crippling blows to capture me," Naruto groaned out as his wounds healed, the speed being a bit slow due to how the lasers cauterized the wounds. "But it's gonna take more than that to get me," he told the Admiral as he gave a little salute before he sped off in a burst of unstoppable speed that created a small shockwave. Unstoppable was a power of his that let him run at incredible speeds, but whenever he tried to stop, it instead doubled his speed and kept him going whether he wanted to or not until he underwent a dramatic change, which was a subtle way to say crashing. Thankfully Undead made that drawback not an issue. "Wow, you're pretty fast," Kizaru droned out behind Naruto before kicking Naruto in his side, sending him flying hard through several buildings. "Of course it's impossible to run away from someone who can move at the speed of light, but at least I'm closer to the water," Naruto thought as he pushed himself up out of the rubble, letting Undead work on healing as he kept his eyes peeled for where Kizaru might show up. "Your devil fruit is quite odd, nothing you can do makes it clear what your power is," Kizaru said as he appeared outside of the now demolished building, while Naruto steadied himself on the rubble. "I'm unpredictable, that's the only hint you'll get," Naruto told him as he activated Unchange on the air below the rubble, pushed up to throw it all into the air, before quickly activating Unbreakable as the pieces fell down and stacked up on one another. Thankfully, as he heard Kizaru fire off a few lasers, stacking the rubble up like this qualified enough for Unbreakable to take effect. But, even with this, he knew it wouldn't stop Kizaru for more than a few seconds, so he needed a way out. "Wow, that sure is something," Kizaru droned out from the other side of the wall, actually a bit surprised that a wall of rubble like this was completely unscathed. "But it's pretty useless when I can just go through it," he told him as he turned into light and made his way through the cracks in the rubble, only to have the kid grab at his wrists, showing he was capable of using Haki to allow him to make contact with his Loja body. "True, but that's kind of what I was going for," Naruto said with a smirk before Kizaru kicked him hard in the chest, sending him flying back and crashing into another building, but leaving his now detached hand stuck around Kizaru's wrists. "You've got a pretty gross ability," Kizaru said as he removed Naruto's hands one at a time, just like Naruto was hoping for. Oh, trust me, you haven't even seen the start of what I can do, but I'd worry more about yourself and what matter of unluck is about to come your way," Naruto told him as he smirked at the man while he regrew his hands as he had tagged Kizaru with unluck right before he got kicked away. Unluck was a very straightforward ability, it allowed him to negate anyone's luck after he touched them with a degree of unluck depending on how long he touched them. It only activated once he stopped touching them and, with how Kizaru removed his hands, made it where Kizaru now had 2 charges of unluck on him. "Unluck?" Kizaru asked with a raised eyebrow before the ground started to rumble only to quickly rupture, blasting him with a large torrent of pure seawater from a seemingly ruptured pipeline that was below the building. "That's 1 stroke of unluck, now here comes the second," Naruto said as he watched a crate fall from above and crash into Kizaru who, due to the seawater dousing him, was unable to go intangible as it shattered and a large amount of chains pushed him down to the ground. "A sea stone?" Kizaru spoke out in shock, confused how the kid knew that there were sea stone chains in the crate inside a random warehouse. He knew the kid couldn't have planned it as he had sent him flying in this direction on his own, this wasn't somewhere the kid had lured or guided him towards. "Just what are you?" Kizaru groaned out as he started to push himself up, using every ounce of what little strength he had due to the sea stone chains and the seawater that was still blasting him, while he saw the kid start to walk out of the second destroyed building he sent him into. "My father calls me an enigma and a headache, the sooner you let me go the better for the both of us," Naruto told him as he started to walk off, waiting for his body to finish healing so he could run off again with Unstoppable. Though, as multiple lasers blasted into pretty much every joint in his body, he found escaping an Admiral really wasn't as easy as he thought it'd be, though if he got one the others he would have been long gone by now. "Wow, sadistic much? You sure do love aiming to cripple," Naruto told him with a chuckle and a smirk as he turned to face the drenched Kizaru who was slowly walking towards him, the look on the man's face showing he wasn't in a good mood. Well, that and how he kept firing lasers into his joints the second they healed. "What? Nothing to say. Don't like it when your prey doesn't show pain. Can't play with your food that way, can you?" Naruto asked with a bigger smirk. "I know about how you operate, Kizaru. I know you like to play with pirates when fighting, causing as much pain you can and like to see them writhe a bit," he told the man before a stronger beam shot through his gut, causing him to cough up some blood, although he kept his smirk on his face. "It's going to be a pain to apologize to the celestial dragons, but with your abilities you're too difficult to capture and too dangerous to let escape," Kizaru told him as he started to charge a beam at the tip of his finger. "It's much easier this way," he added before firing his blast straight at his head and through it, watching as the hood drooped down to show he had vaporized his head clean off. "Well, might as well bring back his body, might figure something out from it," Kizaru thought as he walked towards the body that had fallen limp to its knees. "Maybe I should have aimed for the heart as without a head it's impossible to identify who this was," he realized with a frown as he grabbed the kid's arm only for the arm to grab him first and he watched as the hood slowly started to lift back up. "You have no idea how disorienting it is to regrow a full head," Naruto told him with a smirk, using the man's visible shock and surprise as a window to channel every bit and then some of his strength in a hockey-clad punch that was aimed at the Admiral's face. As the punch connected, the strength behind it was more than enough to send the Admiral flying, as Undead did more than just allow him to heal, it allowed him to truly release all of his strength. Naturally, the brain is hardwired to limit the amount of exertion and strength anyone can let out due to self-preservation to prevent muscles being shredded and fingers being broken with each punch. With Undead and a good amount of training, he was able to suppress those limiters and while his hockey protected his hand from being broken, it still left his arm a mangled mess. But he wasn't here to fight an Admiral, this little window brought upon by the shock of seeing him regrow his head was the window he needed to allow him to finally escape with Unstoppable. Not wanting to waste any more time, he bolted onto the water. His plan to get back to the new world was an interesting mix of unique and simple as he planned to run up the red line and leap off the top of it. From there he'd use Pop's beaver card, which was a piece of paper that would move towards the person who it was made for that he had in an unbreakable compass case to guide him back to the Moby Dick. Though it seemed like that wasn't quite in the cards for him as, shortly after he made it onto the water and away from Sabati archipelago, a seriously massive sea king burst up from the water and, waylaid him. Kizaru was at a bit of a loss as he witnessed the sight. He doubted that the kid was dead from being eaten as if he could regrow a head he could probably survive that. Though with no knowledge of what exactly his devil fruit was he truly had no idea. Well, this'll be a pain to explain to Sengoku, Kizaru thought with a frown as he walked off, the sound of his wet shoes and suit annoying him a bit with each step. A few days later in Amazon Lily, Belt. "Guys, help me pull up the Sea King. I don't know how such a big one died, but it'll definitely help feed the village for a long while." A citizen of Amazon Lily said with a smile as others hurried to help her pull in the large Sea King she had stuck on her net. "Couldn't have grabbed a bigger one?" Another citizen joked as they loaded the Sea King onto the cart and started to help pull it into town. "Hey, we brought back a lot. Found ourselves a Sea King that died in a fight," the cart pullers told the chef as they pulled into Kuja Castle, who could only shake her head and chuckle at them. "Giving me more work I see, but nothing I can't handle," the chef said as they helped the other women lift it out of the cart and onto the massive counter. The chef didn't wait long before they started carving it up, only to scream as something unexpected fell out of it once she gutted it, a human dressed in a black cloak. At first they obviously thought they were dead, given they were inside the stomach of a Sea King, until the human started coughing up water while still unconscious. "Someone get a doctor. She's still alive," the chef yelled out, getting everyone's attention, even the attention of the former Empress of Amazon Lily, Gloriosa, who instantly knew what she was looking at. From the muscles, the face, and the tattoo on their arm, she knew a man when she saw one. "This isn't a Kuja, this is a man," she told them, alerting them and signaling guards to come secure him while allowing him to be looked at by a doctor once secured in a cell. She wasn't sure how he got here, but a man bearing Whitebeard symbol had the potential to be dangerous. Naruto Pav. As Naruto woke up, the head-splitting headache and him coughing up a bit more water was all that was needed to remind him exactly what happened. "Ugh, damn Sea King and damn Admiral," Naruto groaned out and muttered to himself as he reached up to rub his head, only to notice a pair of metal cuffs around his wrists and ankles, and as he looked around that he was in a cell with a whole lot of women staring at him, as if he was some rare animal. All he could really do was raise an eyebrow at them as he sat up, noticing his change in attire, with him now wearing a pair of light blue pants that had crocheted flowers on the legs and frills at the end of each leg and around his waist. "Well, at least I'm not naked," he thought, figuring his old clothes had burnt away in the stomach acid of the Sea King as he looked around his cell to get a grasp of where he was. He was a bit surprised to see his sword and pouch in the far corner of the cell, figuring that alone meant they were very confident in their ability to keep him locked up or their ability to take him down should he try and escape. "So, someone want to fill me in on where I am?" Naruto asked as he sat up and looked over to the women, only for them to quickly aim their bows and arrows at him, his hopes of things going peacefully flying out the window. "Of course things are never so simple with me," he thought with a sigh as he hung his head, hoping this wouldn't come to him having to fight his way out, but sometimes in this world, that's just how things went. It probably had been about a week or so since his fight with the Admiral, most likely, so he figured what was a couple more days away from them. Pops knew he was still alive, and personally he was still a bit out of it due to drowning and being digested for too long for his liking to bust out right now. A few days, that's how long he'd wait for them to either calm down, answer his questions, or free him. Otherwise he'd have to bust out on his own. And personally he really didn't want it to come to that, mainly for their sake. Chapter end. Crew. Naruto eventual captain of his own crew. 1 = I'm using Kurakara from Undead Unluck, not Blue Exorcist. I wasn't aware they shared the name until I googled the name of the sword to remind myself what its name referred to. 2 = this isn't disco. The way I'm doing things is that Doflamingo only gets control of the auction house after all this commotion. I'm doing this to allow the Charlos event to still happen in the future, as that event pretty much formed the supernovas. Originally I wanted to wait until I finished another chapter of something before I posted this, but then my writer's block started to kick my ass a bit more, so I'm posting it now to help with things a bit while I continue to push on lol. So, when I was creating the idea for Unhero, I was unsure about whether to use Undead Unluck powered Naruto in BNHA or OP. Originally I thought it wouldn't work in OP, but when I stopped thinking how it had to be a DF, I realized it could work and work well, hence how this idea came to be. I was debating between landing near Shanks or Whitebeard and figured WB could be more interesting, and I do like family bond type things. And where better for Naruto to learn of hockey and whatnot than from WB and the division captions. Now, with Naruto's crew, it'll only be OP characters, as in no characters from other animes and whatnot. I will say, I will be using the Strawats in Naruto's crew, Sanji and Usopp. I'll be honest, neither are my cup of tea personally due to their personalities and whatnot. Since I'm doing that, well, it should be obvious, I'll state it clearly. No Luffy. So don't ask about him and whatnot. The reason why I'm not having Luffy around is due to how balancing two main characters is difficult. It either comes across like Naruto along for the ride or fighting for the spotlight, with how I want to use the arcs like Alabasta and whatnot, so Naruto would be stuck more or less traveling alongside Luffy and others, which just feels A to me. And also, due to no Luffy, some characters are different, like Ace, who was somewhat mellowed out in a sense by Luffy when they were kids, you know. Hence why Naruto and him butted heads when he first joined. Things are going to be changing a lot due to Naruto and especially due to his powers, otherwise it'd be boring, you know. Expect stuff to be different as things go along, since Naruto would obviously go about things differently than Luffy, and his crew is going to be different as well. Chapter 2. About 3 days went by with him stuck in the cell and mainly waiting and watching the crowd of people who were standing guard at his cell, as well as the crowd of people curious about what a man looked like. Personally, he didn't really mind waiting as he didn't want to cause a mess by busting out just yet as, well, annoying, he wasn't going to bust heads unless they were especially cruel or mean to him, which they weren't. For the most part, his guards weren't really rude or mean to him save for the occasional one who was a stickler for rules. He had even met and got to know a few of them. The first was Marguerite, a rather pretty blonde-haired girl about 2 years younger than him with blonde hair. She was a very nice girl and apparently the one who made his clothes for him, which he appreciated even with the frills and flower patterns, since it was the thought that counted. The other main one he had gotten to know was Afilandra, a very cute and extremely tall woman who stood at an impressive 11.5 feet tall, about half as tall as Pops, with orange-brown hair that went down past her shoulders. He had also met their friend Sweet Pea a bit, but she was often on guard duty with Kikyo, one of the Kuja natives who were heavy sticklers for the rules, so he didn't quite get to talk much with her. All in all, being able to talk with at least some of his guards made things not as annoying, since apparently they were waiting for the leader of Amazon Lily, a pirate and one of the 7 warlords, to return. He knew all about their leader, the woman known as the Pirate Empress Bo Hancock, as well as her powers and some rumors about her personality. He hoped things didn't come down to a fight, but if they did, he'd settle it like he did with Kizaru, focus on escape rather than fighting. For the most part, the residents who occasionally came to watch him did so out of curiosity due to never seeing a man before. He did notice one elderly woman who was very different from the others. The look in her eyes made it clear she recognized his Whitebeard tattoo. Personally, he hoped that could help him get out of here without any hassle, but he wasn't about to assume anything, as for all he knew she could have a grudge against Pops. "How are you today, Naruto?" Marguerite asked with a warm smile as she and Afilandra showed up for their guard duty. "Doing fine. Any news on when your Hibihime will be back?" Naruto asked, looking away from the older woman and towards the 2 familiar faces, while hoping it would finally be the day. "Last I heard, today is the day she is finally returning, so maybe you won't have to wait too much longer," Afilandra told him with a warm smile as well before they slid his breakfast over to him on a tray. Breakfast, well, he wasn't complaining, was more just a loaf of bread, some milk, and an apple. Thankfully, due to his upbringing before and after becoming a shinobi, this was enough to feed him after all. If he could survive on nothing but cup ramen as a kid, then a small meager meal was fine. As he ate, the 3 of them started to notice a whole lot of residents running past the cell with a bunch of them cheering. The cheers of Hibihime made it clear what was going on. "Well, I'm willing to bet that's her about time," he said with a sigh as he finished up his bread and waited for Hancock to make her way over, not like he could do anything else. Well, he activated Unfeel as a slight precaution, given what he knew of Hancock's powers. Unfeel was self-explanatory as it negated his ability to feel anything from physical touch to emotions. He personally didn't use this skill much since, given his incredibly high pain tolerance from being crushed and torn in the void of space, for who knows how long, he didn't have much need for it. Right now though, it was a perfect counter to Hancock's Miro Miro no Mi, which when activated, turned anyone who felt lust or perversion towards her into stone. Not like he was a pervert or anything, but Pops had told him rumors about how it also worked on those who merely thought she was beautiful, hence the precaution. The precaution seemed a good bit necessary as, even without the ability to feel anything, he still knew Hancock was a very beautiful woman. She had an aura of command to her as she wore a rather elegant outfit with a revealing long-sleeved red shirt that more or less put her rather large chest on display, with pink hem and pink feather designs at the end of her sleeves, as well as a loose red sarong that had green Kuja symbols on it and exposed her long legs with white marine-style cape and red-heeled pumps. Behind her were what he figured to be her 2 sisters who often traveled with her. He didn't know much about them as Pops didn't feel a need to talk about them when going over Hancock. The first was easily 12 feet tall, with a somewhat abnormal-sized large head and a curvaceous body. She had long light green hair and green eyes, a long forked tongue hanging out of the corner of her mouth as she stood looking him over like Hancock was doing. She wore a green bikini top with wide irregular patterns, green panties and one legging on her left leg, with a white cape draped on her shoulders. The other woman was easily a few inches shorter than the first, but definitely larger than her, as she was muscled and a good bit fat. She had long orange hair that was done up near her head to look like a pair of horns. Like the other woman, she too wore a bikini top, hers being pink with detailed designs on them and a skirt of sorts around her waist. "So, this is the man who dared sneak his way into Amazon Lily. I was expecting a bit more. What is your name, man?" Hancock asked as Naruto merely stared at her blankly, a byproduct of Unfeel which made it hard for him to make any real expression. "My name is Naruto D. Uzumaki, and I didn't sneak into anywhere. I got eaten by a sea king after I tried to escape a bad situation and fell out of its gut here once it was brought in by your people and carved up," Naruto told her, his tone also flat due to Unfeel. All I want is to be let free so I can make it back to my crew, and I don't need anything other than being released to do so," he added as he pointed to the Whitebeard symbol on his arm. "Inside a Sea King's stomach? How is that possible? You should be dead if that was the case," the green-haired woman asked, clearly confused, which he understood since the acid of a Sea King's stomach was incredibly deadly, given it was often used in weapons by the strong enough pirates who could dispatch them. "He speaks the truth. He fell out of its stomach unharmed with only his clothes worse for wear," the old lady finally spoke as she walked over from her seat. "How exactly did he get eaten by a Sea King? Did he tell you anything while he's been locked up?" the orange-haired woman asked the older woman, only for the woman to shake her head. "He's been silent about how he got here other than it was an accident, said he was waiting for Hancock to arrive, so he didn't have to repeat himself," the older woman explained as Hancock walked closer to his cell. A mere look to Marguerite and Aphilandra before nodding was all that was needed to seemingly order them to lower the cell bars, which they both did with a turn of the keys they were holding, causing the bars to slide down into the ground. "So explain, or would you rather explain in the ring?" Hancock said as they began their staring contest of sorts. "I have no intentions to fight anyone, hence why I've been waiting peacefully in my cell. I only got here by sheer bad luck, I guess, as I was fleeing from a bad situation I caused on the Captivity archipelago, so if you could please let me go, I'd be very appreciative," Naruto told her, as the women behind Hancock looked to one another. The only trouble on Captivity recently was the murder of the older woman started to recall before trailing off as she looked at him in shock as he nodded. "The murder of a celestial dragon," he said, and while most of the women around them had no reaction to the news, Hancock and the two women she arrived with had looks of pure shock on their faces. Hancock though surprised him as she slammed her foot down on his chains, the chains turning to stone and shattering on impact. "Marigold, grab his things. Sandersonia, you grab him. We are going to have a private chat, you hear me?" Hancock told him, her voice definitely struggling to stay strong, at least to his ears. He merely nodded and deactivated Unfeel as the look of almost gratitude in her eyes and slight tears in the corners of her eyes, while confusing him, proved he wouldn't need the skill anymore. While not picked up by Sandersonia, the green-haired woman, she did somewhat lead him as Marigold, the orange-haired one, and Hancock walked a few steps ahead of them while, for some reason, the older woman followed behind them. He was at least able to wave to Marguerite and Aphilandra, who were both very confused at what was going on along with all the others around them as he left. "We'll get these chains off of you once we get inside the castle. We just have to hurry as I think my sister doesn't want anyone to see us breaking down," Sandersonia told him, tears still built up in the corners of her eyes, while her voice was shaking a good bit. Well confused, he really couldn't do anything other than nod and go along with it. Whatever the reason for their intense emotions probably had something to do with celestial dragons and, well, that alone made it a touch bit obvious sadly. Once inside the castle, it didn't take long to get everyone cleared out, even if they were apparently standing around and talking inside what he figured to be Hancock's room. "You will tell me everything that happened on Captivity archipelago. I want to hear it all," Hancock somewhat ordered, although her tone made it sound more like she was almost pleading to learn what went down. "I was accompanying Namor, the 8th Division commander, on a rescue mission there to save some mermaids who were being sold off, and I was to cause a distraction in the front of the auction house while they freed all the slaves in the back. Things got a bit too out of control when Jalmak, or whatever that disgusting creature's name was, started shooting at me and claiming the mermaid was his. Once he started trying to kill the mermaid in a "if I can't have her no one can" situation is when things got messy as I confronted him and choked him a bit before punching a hole through his chest out of anger," Naruto told them, clenching his fist as he just thinking about that thing and what it had said and done made him disgusted. The feeling was definitely mutual as he could also see some hatred in the eyes of the three Hancock sisters as he looked around a bit while Sandersonia removed his chains and Marigold set his things nearby him. "Of course an Admiral got called," I somewhat fought back. "Well, I mainly focused on escaping and I was able to, but the second I got out to water the Sea King burst up and ate me. I was able to survive due to a skill of mine. Next thing I know I'm waking up in a cell and I'm told to wait for you to return," he told them, watching their reactions a bit as Sandersonia and Marigold had looks of pure shock while Hancock had her face buried in her hands as she cried and fell down to her knees. "Everything he said is true, according to what was reported in the papers," the older woman spoke up as she looked over at him, Naruto hearing Hancock yell something about Elder Nyan as the woman held up a newspaper. "They say a cloaked individual killed a celestial dragon and fled capture, last seen running out onto the water, only to be swallowed up by a Sea King. He's thought to be dead, but given you fell out of the stomach of one, you must have had some way to protect yourself," the woman he figured to be Elder Nyan said as Naruto merely nodded, not wanting to give anything away to people he just met, although by their utterly shocked expressions, he felt they probably wouldn't blab about it to others. "I don't regret what I did whatsoever, and honestly, if I see another I'd probably kill them without a second thought. They are disgusting excuses for humans, and they make my skin crawl, given everything Pops told me about them, Naruto told them bluntly, not caring one bit for any admirals or heat he might put himself in by doing so. Sure, back home all the villages were pretty much owned by the daimyo, but they never behaved anything even remotely like the celestial dragons, and they actually seemed to care for the villages they pretty much funded, unlike those creatures. To say this was back-asswards in his mind was an understatement and putting it lightly. I didn't think such a person could exist in this world, she choked out, her voice shaking and cracking as she and her sisters cried for reasons Naruto could only sadly imagine. Why, you're just like him, the one who challenged the heavens with no regard for his own life. She told him as Naruto could only sit down as he watched her. Are you talking about Fisher Tiger? Naruto asked, getting a silent nod from her to show he was right. Fisher Tiger was a rather famous fisherman who was a former slave that had escaped slavery, only to return to marry Geo Ice after climbing up the Red Line and attacking it while freeing as many slaves as he could. He was also the one to start the Sun Pirates, which later was passed over to Jinbei, a fisherman who frequently visited Pops and who Naruto considered a friend after Fisher sadly died. He knew all about this as it was one of the events that Whitebeard taught him about when they were going over major events of the world, and Jinbei had also filled him in about it. He saved me and my sisters after we had become slaves to the celestial dragons, Hancock confessed as she lowered her hands before Naruto held up his hands to stop her, as not only could he see the distress on her face, but Sandersonia was also looking like she was a second away from having a PTSD panic attack. Please, you don't have to go into detail or recall any bad memories. I don't want any of you to have to relive it, he told them, reaching over to put his hand gently on top of Sandersonia's, getting her to look at him and somewhat start to calm down before turning her hand over his and giving it a squeeze while he kept it there for her. He didn't really know what he could do for these people in this situation as they recalled what had to be the worst moment of their lives, but hey, he knew that little things did count, so hopefully, even if he was a stranger, he could ease things a bit with a simple gesture. Those monsters fed us our devil fruits to amuse themselves and did things I don't ever want to remember, Hancock told him, flinching a bit as she did and causing Sandersonia to squeeze his hand tight as he softly squeezed back. They branded us, causing us to forever hide our backs from the world, as if it was ever found out it would ruin our lives, as I refuse to have anyone know about our past. Even if it means deceiving my people, I have to continue this lie. I don't want anyone to control me again, she declared, tears falling heavy from her eyes as Naruto's eyes widened as Hancock's words gave him a light bulb moment. Ruin? Naruto yelled as he shot up, getting confused looks from everyone as he shook his hands and held up a finger to give him a second. I know this sounds weird, and I know we just met, but can you offer me a smidgen of trust and show me your back, cause I think you just let me figure something out that could let me remove that brand off your back, he told her, getting even more confused looks from everyone sans Hancock, who was staring into his rather intensely to figure out his intentions. What are you talking about, boy? You can't remove a brand, Elder Nyan told him before he held up his hand and grabbed his sword. For a bit of trust, I'll trust you all with a secret of mine. The power I have that allowed me to survive being eaten by a sea king is called undead. It is not a devil fruit, and it allows me to negate anything about my death, he told them as he sliced off his hand, eliciting shocked gasps, only for them to watch as his hand regrew. The only people who know about it other than you all are Whitebeard himself and his division commanders, he revealed, showing just how close a secret this was that he was sharing with them. Hancock's words made me finally put together the pieces of another power of mine, Unruin, which I feel will allow me to negate the ruin of others and possibly myself, he explained as he dropped his sword and pointed to Hancock. If that brand is truly your ruin, then let me have the chance to negate it. If I can't, then you can lock me up or even petrify me, Naruto told her, looking her dead in the eyes and hoping she would accept his offer. If you end up getting my hopes up for nothing, I will never forgive you, Hancock threatened with fire in her eyes as he nodded and continued to lock eyes with her before she eventually looked away once she felt he really was being serious about everything. I wouldn't forgive myself either, but I truly believe I can do this as my powers are based on how I view things, and your words finally made it clear to me, he told her, truly feeling that this was how his power worked, a feeling he's had several times as he figured out other powers of his over the years. Then show me, Hancock told him as she took off her cape and then her top without a second thought, pretty much exposing herself to him and causing him to go beet red from the sight, which seemed to get a smirk from her and a chuckle from her sisters. Why, you could have just turned around and then did that or something, you know. He muttered, feeling a bit stupid he was getting like this, but technically these were the first pair of breasts he's actually seen in person too. And it didn't help that Hancock was very beautiful as well as endowed. True, but to me my brand is more intimate than my breasts, so it doesn't matter, she told him before she turned around and moved her hair out of the way, allowing him to see the hoof of the soaring dragon, the brand the celestial dragons gave their slaves. He was gentle as he put his hand on her back, noticing her flinch a bit at his touch and feeling the eyes of the others on him as he closed. He focused in on the mark. All his powers, so long as he understood them, were activated merely with a thought. A mere recital of the power's name was all that was needed for him to get to work, hoping this would work with his understanding of things, as that was generally all that was needed for his powers. Thankfully, as he watched the mark start to slowly fade and heard the shocked gasps of the two Boa sisters behind him, it seemed he was correct in his understanding of things. Though like all his powers there was always a bit of balance to things. In Unruin's case, it seemed that for all the ruin he removed he in turn felt the pain of that ruin. Though a bit of pain from the sensation of branding was absolutely nothing to him, as he had swam in lava to test undead and unburn in the past after all. It worked, it's gone, he told her with a smile as he took his hand off her back, getting her to turn around at a speed he thought almost wasn't possible to check if he was lying or not. A look to her sisters, who both nodded, and a hand mirror alongside a mirror on the wall to check with her own eyes was all she needed to confirm it. Next thing he knew, he was being hugged so strongly it probably broke a few bones, but he didn't care, neither about it or her being topless, as this was a hug of pure gratitude and thanks. Her tears he felt soaking into his shirt while he hugged her back proved it all. I don't know what to say, she choked out as he gently rubbed her back as he hugged her. You don't have to say anything, just enjoy your freedom, he told her as she slowly let go of him and watched as he removed the brands on Marigold and Sandersonia, just like he did with her, neither of which flashed him like she did though. It turned out the celestial dragons had done a bit more to Sandersonia than the others, apparently experimenting on her, which in turn was the cause of how large her head had become. She must have viewed it as a ruin as well, as he was able to reverse that all for the cost of feeling some pain that felt like his head was being stretched in every direction. 3. But it was worth it to see her tears of happiness as she looked at herself in the mirror before she, like Hancock, hugged him despite being topless as well. Though, also like Hancock's hug, Sandersonia's was one of pure gratitude and thanks. Never thought I'd see the day, it's been such a long time since our great snake princess has shown any emotion at all. I was afraid your heart was frozen solid, Nyan said as she was even finding herself wiping an occasional tear out of the corner of her eyes at the sight of everything that had just happened. Silence. You're a traitor to this nation. Hancock snapped as she put back on her top and cape while Nyan glared back at her. No, you be silent. I was the one who found you 3 after you escaped due to you having no idea how to get home again. Who do you think brought you here? You were lucky I went to the outer seas. Nyan snapped back as Hancock merely turned her back to her and walked over to him. And you never let me forget it, Hancock said with a scoff which only upset Nyan even more. I've been like a mother to you. I watched over you, and Nyan started ranting as Naruto wasn't quite sure what was going on, although the look on Marigold and Sandersonia showed this might be a regular occurrence between the two women. I know you want to return to your crew, but please, you have to let us repay you in some way. A feast and a room in my castle for the night to make it up to you for what you have done for us, and to apologize for having you in a cell like that, Hancock begged him as she put a hand on his arm before Sandersonia walked over and did the same on his other arm. One more night shouldn't be an issue, right? She asked as Naruto could only shrug as they did have a point. Ops knows I'm alive as he has my Viver card, one more night isn't going to change the chewing out I'll be getting for causing a mess, so sure, why not, he told them with a chuckle, as he might as well enjoy things a bit before he had to leave, and a feast sounded nice. Great. Marigold, you go tell the island, while Sandersonia, you go tell the chefs to get started right away. I'll guide him to a room he can use and store his things before we head straight to the dining hall, Hancock told them, getting nods from her sisters while she picked up his things for him and handed them to him. Naruto, this way, Hancock said with a warm smile, grabbing his arm and gently pulling him along. I'll also get a ship prepared for you in the morning as well, so you can make it back to your crew, she added as they walked down the hallway of the castle. Thank you, but it's not really needed as I can use another ability of mine to kinda run there, he told her, getting a confused look from her before she nodded, since if he could regrow an arm and undo what was once thought permanent, then who was to say he couldn't run on water or whatever he was implying. Just be sure to keep an eye out for sea kings, don't want you getting eaten again, she said with a smirk as he chuckled and nodded. I promise I'm normally more alert, but I'll be sure to keep an eye out, he assured her as they arrived at the room, Naruto noticing it was pretty much right next door to hers, as it was just a left turn from her room and at the end of the long hallway. Here is your room, the feast I figure will be beginning soon, as Kuja Castle is always full of girls who eat their meals here, and my cooks are always working to feed those who show up. Plus an order from me probably kick them into overdrive, Hancock said with a smile as Naruto set his bag and sword on the bed, not seeing any reason he'd need any of his things. A nice meal before I head back to get scolded by Pops will be nice, he said with a chuckle, as he knew Pops wasn't going to be happy with the mess he caused or the fact he has been gone for so long. I hope all of this won't get Whitebeard angry with my island, Hancock muttered as despite being a powerful warlord and angry emperor, especially one like Whitebeard who valued his crew members like family, was something she didn't want at her doorstep. Oh no, you really don't have to worry about that. This situation is very understandable given Amazon Lily and all, plus anyone would be suspicious of a body falling out of a sea king. Plus me telling him to not worry about it will get him to drop it as well, Naruto quickly assured her as he waved her off since he knew Pops well enough to at least assure her. Well, I'll take your word on that, but before we head to the dining hall I want to thank you again. I never expected to meet a man like you, let alone for you to do all that you did for me and my sisters, Hancock said, a bit nervous as she crossed her arms and rubbed them a bit. I'll be honest, there is really no need to thank me, Naruto told her as he gently and somewhat slowly put a hand on her arm, as given her past, he wasn't sure how the touch of a man would make her feel. I might be a pirate, but before I was one I did my best to help others. If I'm able to then I still will try and help people, despite how odd that sounds now that I'm a pirate, he added with a chuckle, getting a smile from her as she put her hand over his and gave it a squeeze. You are definitely one of a kind in this world, I truly lucked out having you end up here, she said with a smile as she left her hand on top of his. Though, just as she was seemingly about to say something else, a knock came at the door. Defying, dinner is ready and the residents are waiting, Nyan said from the other side of the door, getting Hancock to quickly turn and glare daggers at the door. We'll be right out. Hancock yelled back through clenched teeth, which got a chuckle out of Naruto before she sighed. Damn old crow has the worst timing, she grumbled before he patted her on the shoulder. I think that's just an old person thing, he joked, getting her to calm down a bit and chuckle at his joke. You can still say whatever you were about to, not like a few moments is going to ruin the dinner, he told her before she shook her head. No, it's nothing important. It can wait until after the feast, she said with a sigh as she opened the door, giving Nyan a glare before he followed her with Nyan walking alongside him. As they arrived in the rather massive dining hall, it was pretty much full of women sitting at the several long tables that stretched down the huge room. Most of the women were confused about him being alongside Hancock, but as Sandersonia and Marigold flanked them, they probably assumed he was allowed to be here. Everyone. I know you all have a lot of questions about why a man is on Amazon Lily, let alone inside Kuja Castle. But don't worry, as this man, Naruto, is a welcomed guest as he has done something no one was capable of. He removed the Gorgon's curse. Hancock announced, getting gasps from everyone around. Our backs are no longer cursed, and the powers of the curse are now under our full control, no more innocents will ever be caught in the crossfire of the curse. This is a time to celebrate before he has to leave to return to his crew. Sandersonia told them, getting cheers as the food quickly started to pour in. The feast quickly turned into a bit of a party of sorts, girls celebrating and happily chatting, while Naruto found himself seated between Hancock and Sandersonia. Though he wasn't alone at the table with the Boa sisters, as Marguerite, Aphilandra, and some of their friends were also there, having come over after he waved at them, something that Hancock didn't seem to mind as she nodded at them to show it was okay. It seemed the two of them had been a bit worried about him when he was taken away by Hancock and were happy to see that he was safe. The feast, which was more of a party than anything, quickly sort of centered around him due to one part his feat of curing the curse and another part him being the first man that many of them had ever seen. It wasn't too bad, but they definitely were curious about him. I hope this is okay for me to ask, as it's not every day that we get to sit down with a member of Whitebeard's crew, but what is it like being a part of it? Nyan asked, piquing the interest of Hancock and her sisters, given they were also pirates. It's like being part of a family, but I think that's kind of expected with Pops, Naruto said with a chuckle, before he sort of stared off into the distance a bit and set down his food. But honestly, if it wasn't for Pops I don't know where I'd be or where I'd be, as he found me at a rough spot in my life, he started as he leaned back in his chair. The madwoman had destroyed my home island completely before killing herself. I was lost at sea, and due to the reclusive nature of my home, I knew nothing of the outside world. Plus I had these new powers that awakened due to her, so I didn't know what to do, but then he offered me, an absolute stranger, a place to stay and even has been helping me train for the last 2 years. So when people say he's like a father to them they really mean it, he told them with a smile, hopefully lightening the mood a bit after his somber past. Well, if Whitebeard has someone like you at his side, it definitely bolsters his chances of becoming king of the pirates, should he ever decide to, Nyan said as Naruto shrugged his shoulders with a smirk. Well, I know they'll help me when I set off on my own to try and become king of the pirates, he told them, unable to keep from laughing a bit from their shocked expressions. But that means you'd be going against Whitebeard. Does he know? Marguerite asked in shock, not exactly understanding it given Naruto's praise of Whitebeard. Oh, he knows and he supports me fully, hence why he's training me so hard. He's one of the very few people who know the reason behind why I want to be king of the pirates, and it was after I told him that he decided to support me so much. But for the time being I'm more than happy sailing with Pops, so don't think I don't support him or anything. I wouldn't have gotten a tattoo of his symbol if I didn't, he reassured them, while Nyan couldn't help but chuckle a bit. I can only imagine what chaos you'll bring to the world once you set out, though it might be for the best, Nyan said, as between him killing a celestial dragon, to escaping an admiral, and being apparently unkillable, it was obvious he was a storm just waiting to be unleashed onto the seas. Well, only time will tell, he said with a shrug of his shoulders as he went to pick up his food, only to stop himself as he saw a girl somewhat nervously walking up to them with a book and pen in her hands. Hello, Naruto is it? The girl asked as Naruto nodded and sat up a bit. My name is Narine, a friend of Marguerite's, and, if you don't mind, can I maybe ask you some questions? She asked, clearly a bit nervous, most likely due to him being beside Hancock before he nodded. Go ahead, not really every day a man is here, so I expected a lot of questions, he said with a chuckle, as he could see a lot of women had stopped all their personal conversations and were intently listening in. First thing many people want to know is, how did you survive being inside a sea king's stomach? Narine asked as Naruto wasn't too surprised that people were curious about it. Well, mainly due to luck, as my cloak took the majority of the damage and shielded me from the acid, paired with the fact that I was swallowed up close to the border of the calm belt and can hold my breath for a long time, so you guys saved me a good bit by catching the Sea King before I actually died, Naruto lied, being pretty good at thinking up excuses for his skills off the top of his head due to making them up for other crew members for almost 2 years. What kind of skills do men have? Kikyo asked as she walked up, a stern expression still on her face, which somewhat led him to believe she always looked serious no matter the situation. Her walking up definitely surprised him as, to be honest, she gave off a vibe that felt like she really didn't want to be around him. Though it might be due to him being a man and her being strict to the rules of the land, which he didn't blame her, as he didn't like stepping on any toes, even if he was invited by Hancock. Well, it's not like all men can do the same stuff, Naruto told her, as he definitely wanted to make clear that not all men are the same, since from some murmuring and talk he was overhearing, it seemed that the majority of girls thought men were uniform in what they could do or something along those lines. In terms of fighting, I'm personally skilled with a sword, although I don't quite have a style yet. I'm also good with guns and hand-to-hand combat, which is my main way to fight, but if we are talking unique abilities, well, I have a bit too many to list, he told them with a chuckle, which only got more curious looks, even from Hancock and her sisters. Like what? Hancock asked, definitely curious to learn more about him, especially if Undead and Unruin were just the beginning of what he could do. Well, I promised Pops not to really tell or show them to others, he said, drawing it out with a smirk before standing up. I can at least show you a little trick of mine that I tend to use as a fun little dinner game, he told them as he picked up a glass of water. To do that I need a volunteer, he announced, which quickly got a ton of hands in the air, which he couldn't help but chuckle a bit at. How about Marguerite? Naruto decided, getting a happy smile from her and some frowns from the others, which quickly faded away back into excitement as they were still excited over seeing whatever he was going to show them. So, what do you need me to do? Marguerite asked, clearly excited as she pretty much had stars in her eyes. It's simple, I need you to put this glass of water somewhere in the room. Preferably somewhere visible so people can't see it, but it can be anywhere as long as there is enough space over it for a bean to get in, otherwise the bean will shatter the glass to get to the water, Naruto explained as he picked up an uncooked bean that had been in his food while people murmured in confusion. Care to give an explanation of what to expect? Hancock asked as she was also quite curious to what this would end up being, just like the rest of the girls, even with the small bit of insight she had on his powers. Well, normally I do this with bullets in a fight, but I can pretty much do it with anything, as a skill of mine allows me to kind of always hit a shot through constant ricochet, so long as I have a target in mind, he explained as he held the bean between 2 fingers. What you all are about to see is a surefire shot of getting this bean in the cup, he told them, the murmurs turning to excited ones as Marguerite went over to Aphilandra and whispered in her ear. She clearly seemed on board by the smile on Aphilandra's face before she lifted Marguerite up on the palm of her hand towards the ceiling with the cup in Marguerite's hand and up against the ceiling with just about an inch or 2 of space between it. Will this work? Marguerite asked with a proud smile, feeling like she had picked the perfect spot that was within the rules he set but also still impossible. Perfect, he said, chuckling a bit as he put the bean on the palm of his hand and readied himself to flick it. Now I would like to warn everyone that I can't control how the bean gets there via ricochet, so it might bounce off a few of you. Take a look and try and follow my unbelievable shot, he announced before he flicked the bean a decent amount to send it flying off. Unbelievable was a rather interesting skill, it sort of acted as a skill that allowed him to defy logic with his shots, as Pops liked to put it. Any shot fired while active, so long as it wasn't aimed at his target, would essentially ricochet endlessly until it hit. Downside was that 1, he couldn't control what it ricocheted off, and 2, it was somewhat useless in wide open areas that didn't have things to ricochet off of. though the latter could be sidestepped with the use of Unchanged to make barriers, but even then it was hard to set up ricochets when he had little to no control over how it went. Though personally the ability of an unpredictable more or less surefire shot outweighed those downsides, and then some he felt. The bean was definitely behaving the same way his bullets tended to, with unbelievable, bouncing in random directions through the room. It seemed to bounce mainly off cups, tables, and walls, though a bit embarrassingly it did bounce off of a pair of breasts or two. Everyone was focused on the bean as it flew, Naruto knowing it was nearing its final few shots, given it never ricocheted indefinitely. As the bean made its last few bounces it went off the table beside Aphalandra, bounced off the ceiling, off of Aphalandra's chest, which due to its, well, size, caused it get lobbed up and curve at just the right angle to drop into the cup with a satisfying plop which got a round of cheers from the women in the room. "How were you able to do that? That was incredible," Marguerite said in amazement as Aphalandra set her down and gave him back the cup. "It's just one of my many skills that I'm just able to do, I really can't explain it," other than that he told her with a chuckle as he set down the glass. "I'm willing to answer more questions, but please, let's not hold up the meal as we can eat," and Taki asked with a smile, getting nods from them as they were able to get back to the meal. The rest of the meal was nice and a bit fun as, well, he did answer a few more questions, he was more able to enjoy the meal and even show off a few more tricks of his, although nothing related to his abilities. He was even able to get Hancock to relax a bit, smiling and laughing a bit here and there, which from various surprised reactions, seemed to be a rarity for them to see. He had no idea how late it was when the food finished up and things wound down, only that the moon was high and people were passing out from drunkenness and exhaustion. Those that could head home did, and those that couldn't were allowed to lodge in one of the many rooms in Kuja Castle on the first floor. Even he couldn't help but start to feel a bit tired as this was a bit of an eventful day with a whole lot going on. Before going off to his room he did say goodnight to Marguerite and Aphalandra, the latter having a bit of an emotional rollercoaster due to being drunk. It was rather cute as she went from happy that she got to have fun with him to sad he was leaving tomorrow, while crying to what he thought might be flirty as she hugged him, pretty much burying him in her large chest as she told him how happy he could be if he stayed with them here. Thankfully Marguerite was able to pull Aphalandra off him and get her to head off to bed so he could head off as well. "You really didn't have to show me to my room, I'm not drunk or anything, since undead makes it incredibly difficult to get wasted with how it tries to protect my liver," he told Hancock with a chuckle, as that little trick made him win many a drinking bet among the crew while she walked alongside him to his room. "True, but I still have something to talk with you about, something that only became clearer during the feast," she told him, getting him to look over to her as they stopped in front of his room. "Does that have anything to do with you looking sick suddenly and leaving in a rush for a bit?" Naruto asked as she had rushed out previously with Nyan leaving to bring her back. Whatever Nyan had said or done seemed to work as Hancock returned looking back to normal with her. "Yes it does, so may we head inside?" Hancock asked a bit nervously, him nodding as he opened the door for her and they headed inside. He was a bit surprised to find Sandersonia in the room already, seemingly waiting for them. "Sandersonia? What are you doing here?" Naruto asked as Hancock walked over to her sister and turned around to face him. "It's because we both need to talk to you about the same thing," Sandersonia told him as she reached out for her sister's hand with a nervous look on her face, which was mirrored by Hancock. He merely nodded and stayed silent as he watched her take a few deep breaths, seemingly gathering her confidence to say whatever she felt she needed to. "Men are not something we have a good past with, even out in the world we keep them far away from us due to everything that happened. There is only one man that we really know to be kind, and he's more of like a father-ish figure to us due to how he helped us during." Sandersonia started off, seeing that Hancock was still gathering her courage and figuring that her starting things might help her out. "You are honestly something we never expected to encounter, so to not only find someone who would be foolish enough to kill one of them, but also be able to remove their brand off us, truly freeing us from them. To say it shocked us to our core is an understatement," Hancock said with a slight chuckle at the end as she reached out for Sandersonia's hand for a bit of support. "We truly thought we'd forever have that reminder of the worst part of our lives stuck with us. I thought I'd have to see it every time I looked in the mirror," Sandersonia said as she tentatively touched her cheek with her free hand, as if still expecting her head to be its former size, and her expression showing how much her altered head had affected her until now. "But you truly freed us and, through your actions and a bit of the old hag's advice, made me realize something," Hancock said with a bit of a glare off to the side before she shook it off and reached forward to cup his cheek. "Something that we surprisingly both share," Sandersonia added on as she cupped his other cheek. "We are both in love with you," they said together as the first to kiss him was Sandersonia before she pulled away and let Hancock kiss him. To say his mind short-circuited for a second from all of this would be an understatement as this was just a lot, to put it lightly. What? Naruto stammered out as they pulled their hands away and down to each hold a hand of his as he shook his head a bit to try and help him grasp what was happening. Look, I'm honored, but are you sure? We did just meet and all, he told them, getting chuckles from them both as they gently gave his hands a squeeze. We're aware of how fast this is, but Nyan told me of a saying that goes, love is always a hurricane. It's apparently well known in the eastern seas, and for once I agree with the hag that it fits the situation, Hancock told him as she looked up into his eyes, a soft blush on her cheeks. Given you are leaving in the morning, and who knows when you'll return or if you'll ever be able to, we decided we didn't want to miss the only chance we might have at letting you know, HaretaSora explained a bit more with a smile and a blush of her own on her cheeks. But both of you? Not to sound skeevy or anything, but I really hope you aren't expecting me to choose, Naruto said, wincing a bit due to how terrible that sounded, though the smirks and slight chuckles from the both of them at least showed they understood what he was trying to say. After all, with them being sisters, the last thing he wanted was them to fight or hate him over who he might choose over the other if he was forced to. But also, asking this just felt a bit wrong. Don't worry, we realize how much of a trap that would be and endanger you, and whoever you ended up picking, Hancock told him, finding his worry about it to be a bit cute. We also know that while away from here, you might attract the attention of other women, and after a good deal of arguing from a certain someone, HaretaSora started to say, looking over to her sister who was looking away with her arms crossed and a pout. We decided to not hold you back, she told him, getting a bit of a confused look from him. She means, despite us confessing to you, we won't force you to be only ours, though we expect you to let others know you have us as well, and to not forget us, Hancock told him, a look of almost vulnerability in her eyes, as he nodded and reached out to give her hand a squeeze. He already knew that the life of pirates wasn't quite monogamous and how some stronger pirates tended to attract the attention of several ladies around them. It was kind of a given in a sense with pirates, and Pops endlessly teased him at times how he'd do well in these waters for. When I do eventually set out on my own and if other girls end up with me, I'll definitely make things clear and I absolutely won't forget about you too, I promise, he told her as he reached out for HaretaSora's hand and gave them both a squeeze, hoping to assure both of them that he wasn't about to become a playboy or anything unsavory like that. Now that somewhat awkward talk is done, I think it's time for us to head off to bed and all of us to get some sleep, since apparently someone has a lot of running to do first thing in the morning, HaretaSora teased, lightening the atmosphere and showing Hancock had told her about his refusal of a ship. Not that he minded, as if it wasn't like they wouldn't see him do it in the morning. I guess you're right, though I would prefer if you could stay longer, but I'm also not going to force you to, Hancock grumbled a bit with a rather cute pout on her face that he was able to get her to stop once he cupped her cheek. I promise that I will make sure to come and visit when I set out on my own, and I assure you I never break a promise, he told her, doing his best to convey his seriousness, which seemed to work as she smiled and moved in for another kiss, one that he was actually able to return this time. Kissing was another thing he had no experience in, especially since he refused to even acknowledge that it happened. Plus, with him constantly regrowing his body, he liked to believe he was free from it, as with a new body he was allowed a new first kiss. He felt the world at least owed him that much. Hey, don't forget about Emmy, I want a kiss before we have to go to bed, as HaretaSora playfully whined as she hugged him from behind, which, due to her height, pretty much squished the back of his head into her breasts, before HaretaSora gently tilted up his head and kissed him from above. To say it was an experience was an understatement, especially with HaretaSora's long tongue that made his eyes go wide once it entered his mouth. As much as we'd really like to continue, I think this is where we have to tear away from you, or else we might get a bit wild, HaretaSora purred out with a flirty smile, Naruto blushing a bit at what she meant and saw from the expression on Hancock's face that she was also holding herself back a bit. We'll see you in the morning, sleep well my dear, Hancock said with a smile, once she calmed herself down before she and HaretaSora left. Once the door was closed, Naruto found himself collapsing back onto the bed, this all being a whole lot to wrap his head around. This is definitely something I won't be telling Pops about, he thought with a chuckle as he pushed himself to sit up on the bed. Well, if this is the case I'll have to get something ready for them before I leave. Thankfully I always keep a bit of it with me, Naruto thought over as he reached over for his bag before fishing around inside it, deciding to tinker around a bit before he inevitably passed out from the exhausting and intense day he had. Plus he had Pop's earful to look forward to as well, so he definitely needed all the rest he could before tomorrow. Next morning. Wow, you guys really don't have to give me such a big send-off, Naruto told them with a chuckle, as it seemed like all of Amazon Lily was waiting at the shores for them to see him off. It made him actually feel a bit embarrassed and bashful to be treated like such a celebrity. Just goes to show how much of an impact you had on us in your short time here, you became friends to them and a forever ally to us, Marigold said with a smile as she gave him a solid pat on the back. We really wish you didn't have to leave, Naruto, but we understand why you have to, Marguerite said with a frown as other girls nodded sadly around them. You'll visit again, right? It's really sad that you have to leave so soon, Aphilandra said, cutely almost tearing up as she seemingly couldn't help it and grabbed him for a hug. Though due to her size and what he figured to be naivety from never being around men, resulted in him pretty much being squished against and between her breasts. And the only way to somewhat get her to stop forced him to put his hands on them and push a bit, which in turn revealed just how soft they were, though he quickly shook those thoughts out of his head. I already promised Hancock I'd return once I eventually set out on my own, so don't worry, I'll come back and visit you and everyone else, he assured her and the others, reaching up to wipe Aphilandra's tears a bit as she nodded with Marguerite helping calm her down and pull her away as he walked back towards Hancock and the others before pulling something out his bag for them. Before I leave though, I want you guys to have this, it's an unbreakable case with a piece of my Vivre card inside it, he told them as he handed them a large compass case that he had emptied out and put a piece of his Vivre card in before locking it up essentially by making it unbreakable. This was pretty much what had to be done with any and all pieces of his Vivre card as, given how much he died, the pieces tended to become ash a lot before reforming. The ash part made it easy for it to be blown away or lost if it wasn't contained in something, so this was something he thought up which he felt worked best. This also made it easier for people to track him as they could pretty much use it as a compass or log pose for him in a sense. We'll keep it safe and use it should we ever need to find you, Hancock said with a smile as she accepted it and held it close to her. Try not to keep us waiting too long, Sandersonia told him, winking at him with a smirk as he could only nod back with a bit of a blush as he remembered last night. I'll do my best, he told them as he looked over to Hancock, who gave him a soft smile and a nod, telling him it was fine to go now as he turned to face the crowd which was being parted to allow him a clear path to the ocean. Naruto definitely felt a bit bad about leaving so soon as this was the first real island he had traveled to on his own in a sense, even if he had arrived there in the stomach of a sea king against his will. Though, despite all that, it was still a fun experience and it made him even more excited for when he eventually set off on his own. But before that, he needed to return to Pops and explain everything. He just hoped Pops wasn't too mad at him or that he could talk his way out of any serious punishment cause he definitely didn't want to be on latrine duty again. Well, better get going, waiting around won't make things better for me, he thought with a sigh as he fished out his own unbreakable compass that contained Pop's Vivre card to help guide him back to an ever-moving Pops and picked up even more speed since his rather insane plan, to put it lightly, required a lot of speed. How else was he supposed to run up and over the red line without enough speed to work against gravity? Chapter end. Chapter 3. Running up the red line might seem like an insane plan, and trust him, he knew it was as well, but there was really no other way for him to get over it since he had no ship to go under and no money to pay a crew to let him cross under with them. It wasn't like he had just thought this up and was going off the seat of his pants, this was something he worked on and practiced with by running up other huge mountains. Sure, they weren't anywhere near as tall as the red line, but since Unstoppable always kept his speed the same unless he crashed into something, he really didn't have much to worry about. As for getting over the ledge, so he didn't just shoot off into the sky, he also practiced that a good bit. Though, just like the practice running up, he'd have to see how the real thing compared to it. He had a few backup plans in case things went poorly, but he really hoped he wouldn't have to use them. Once he finally cleared the calm belt, with thankfully no sea kings having tried to eat him, he cranked up his speed to prepare for the red line. The closer he got, the more he ran through the plan and prepared himself, pulling up the hood of his cloak and tightening his grip around the compass containing Pop's Vivre card. The plan was simple yet insane. He'd use a combination of Unstoppable and Unseen to run up and across the red line before he leapt off it. Unstoppable thankfully was one power that could stay on while he used another power, and Unseen would hopefully keep him somewhat safe while running across the red line. There were dangers with this plan, obviously. First off, he didn't quite like using this combination as it was tricky moving around with Unseen, but even more difficult while going at high speeds. The other more present danger depended on his luck. If he ended up running across a not so occupied part of the red line, he was fine, but if he didn't, well, he'd have to dodge guards and whatever defenses were up there. Well, time to see if I can execute it. Here goes nothing, he declared, hyping himself up as he got closer and closer to the red line. To actually start running up it, he had to approach it at a sort of diagonal approach instead of a head-on one to start his way up the red line, due to that being the best way to reasonably get up onto a vertical surface without the danger of either crashing into it or messing up his footing and causing him to fall down it. He had practiced this approach before on land, so he somewhat knew what he was doing, and thankfully it was more or less the same on water. Briefly gave a sigh of relief as he safely made it up onto the red line and gradually turned, so he was now running straight up it. Though he didn't let himself get comfortable as now was the tricky part. Now, to keep himself from being detected, he was running with his eyes closed, completely invisible to the world save for the occasional time he had to open his eyes to ensure he didn't miss the top of the red line. As he saw himself getting closer to the top through his brief moments of opening his eyes, he ran through the motion needed to safely get over the ledge and continue running without messing up his speed. It was a bit of an odd motion involving him leaning forward, grabbing the ledge in front, flipping over and onto the top of the red line all in one go. Sounded easy, but he had to do all of that fast enough to ensure he didn't more or less crash into himself mid-flip and that his feet planted back on the ground in a way that also didn't break his back due to his legs still being on auto running. Thankfully he was able to do this with his eyes opened, otherwise it'd invite a whole other level of difficulty onto it. Though still wasn't easy as he had only really safely done it a small handful of times during practice. This time he'd have to get it right, otherwise he'd be at risk of being visible while his body healed, and he'd have to regain the speed he had lost in a dangerous environment he couldn't risk spending any additional time in. As he neared the top he took a deep breath and went for it, holding his breath and gritting his teeth as he did what he practiced. As he succeeded in getting over and onto the top of the red line he couldn't help but silently thank Pops once again for being a relentlessly strict teacher. Now though he was on the most dangerous part of running across the red line with his eyes closed, not being able to open them at all due to the risk of being potentially recorded or captured on photo, and relying solely on his ability to feel his surroundings and react after very little time. He felt he was decent at this, but doing it while running at high speeds was definitely a whole lot more difficult. Even in practice he didn't have too good a record for succeeding. Though, with how today was going, he was confident he could pull all of it off cleanly or at least clean enough to ensure he got off the red line in the end. He had no idea of his surroundings but, from the yelling voices and the clamoring, it seemed his invisible track was being somewhat noticed. Thankfully though he easily outsped any potential pursuers and was easily able to dodge any bullets they fired as that was the one absolute thing that Pops trained him to do best of all. It wasn't actually that hard as long as he could hear the bullet being fired, which allowed him to know where it was being shot at and visualize the trajectory of it. Plus it absolutely helped that he had colors of observation hockey to help him with it on top of his natural skill of doing it on his own, since Pops didn't want him to solely rely on his hockey with unseen. He wasn't a master of colors of observation and he couldn't quite fully visualize the world around him like some masters of it apparently could, but he definitely could use it to help him see people and things in a certain radius around him while running. As he kept running he could see a bit with his hockey that he was nearing the edge, deciding now was the perfect time for him to stop, which caused his speed to double as he focused on waiting until the very last moment to jump. Leaping off the highest point in the world, the land far above the clouds, he couldn't help but briefly open his eyes to take in the view. If it wasn't for the bullets being fired at behind him, he could properly take in the beautiful view of the sun rays shining through the clouds and the almost heaven-like it gave off, but he just reminded himself there was always next time as he closed his eyes again and began his freefall. It didn't take long for him to break through the clouds as he oriented himself pointed down head first to speed his fall up with his crash into the water, while a bit painful came shortly after. Well, part 1 went smoothly, Naruto thought as he floated up and allowed his limbs to fix themselves before pulling himself up onto a section of solid unchanging water. Now I just have to make my way back to Pop's ship, hopefully he isn't too far, he hoped with a sigh as he started running once more, using a mix of unchanged and unstoppable until he got to a speed where he could run on water. He just hoped they were expecting him as he was a good bit tired of running. Moby Dick. Thankfully Naruto was right about them expecting him as it didn't take too long for Marco to come pick him up and fly him back, though seeing how annoyed Pops looked, a part of him wished he had a bit more time before having to face him. "You have something to say, son?" Pops finally asked, his tone showing he wasn't happy at all and clearly restraining himself from releasing his hockey. "Yes, I want to say I'm sorry for endangering the retrieval team. That was never my intention and I didn't plan on killing that celestial dragon," he apologized as he met eyes with Pops. "I lost control of my temper after hearing and seeing how those things tried to treat the mermaid and next thing I knew I punched a hole through their chest but," he explained before holding up a finger. "I made sure all attention was on me while I fought Kizaru, so I really hope that I was able to ensure everyone got out safely," he said, faltering a bit at the end, as if others were hurt in the escape, then he really lost any leg he had to stand on. "Yeah, we all got out safely and all the slaves were saved and sent back to their homes. Your fight with Kizaru drew all attention away from us to where they didn't even look our way," Namor replied as he and the other division commanders sat in a row along both sides of Pops. Having all the division commanders there didn't worry him, since he wasn't technically part of any of the divisions, not even the first division which was technically the main Moby Dick. "Oh, that's great, I was really worried while I fought Kizaru and did my best to be a bit more flashy to keep eyes on me," Naruto said, giving a legit sigh of relief since he had been worried about it while he was stuck in Amazon Lily before Pop slamming his hand down on the armrest of his chair, snapped him out of it and made him quickly turn his attention back to Pops. "You caused a major stir in the world with killing a celestial dragon boy. Pirates don't just go around doing that." Pops barked out, glaring at him before he burst out into laughter, seemingly unable to hold it in any longer. "I'm so damn proud of you, son," he declared, the other division commanders also laughing and cheering, thoroughly confusing Naruto as he had no idea what was going on. "Wait, you aren't angry?" Naruto asked before Pops waved him off, still laughing a bit. "Sure, I was upset when I first heard everything, but the fact you apologized and worried about Namor and the crew that was there with you, like I expected you would, removed my anger and made it clear you did good," Pops explained before smiling at him. "Plus, how can I not be proud of a son of mine who not only awakened their conqueror's haki, but also caused such major waves in the world with the death of a celestial dragon. I knew the will of D was in your blood." Pops boasted, clearly proud and happy for him and what he had done. It was a nice first burst of it, with some more training he should be able to actually use it in battle and out in the field, Namor told them, Pops nodding along with a big smile still stuck on his face. "Great. Yet another thing to drill into him," Pop said as he pounded his armrest, this time out of excitement. "So, the paper said you were eaten by a sea king, so where did you end up getting spit out at?" he asked, curious as to what took Naruto so long to get back to them. "Well, the sea king that ate me got fished up and cut up, which let me fall out of it inside the borders of Amazon," Lily Naruto quickly muttered before most of the commanders burst out in laughter, Pops included. "No wonder you took so long getting back. They probably locked you up the second they saw you were still alive, Hareta," the 12th division commander said in between laughs. "Well, that's definitely true, but thankfully I was able to talk my way out of it. Turns out the current queen, the warlord Bo Hancock, and I share a hatred toward something, and after helping her with something she let me leave and even said for me to consider her an ally," Naruto told them, smirking at them as he watched some of their expressions turn into various levels of shock or surprise. "That's a good ally to have in your pocket for the future," Pop said with a smirk as Naruto nodded. "They even helped me figure out Unruin, so I guess it wasn't such a bad thing that I got stuck there for a bit," Naruto added, which got a lot of curious looks from everyone. "So? What are you able to do with it?" Aizu, the 16th division commander asked as he leaned forward a bit, clearly interested given everything else he had seen Naruto do, especially when it came to firearms. "It lets me negate anything that I would consider a ruin about the person I'm using it on, though I also feel it can apply to inanimate things. Basically, if you have a terrible scar or maybe an illness, I can negate it and remove it," Naruto explained, looking to Pops when he mentioned the word illness, which the man definitely noticed. "I appreciate the offer, but no," Whitebeard bluntly told him with a serious look on his face, which almost made Naruto fall flat on his face. "Wait, what? Come on, Pops, I have a way to restore you to your prime, and right out the bat you say no?" Naruto asked, seriously shocked that it was being turned down like this. "Look, Naruto, it's not that Pops doesn't want to be healed, trust me, he does, it's more about how the world would react," Marco started to explain, as all the commanders looked like they understood how he was feeling. If Pops suddenly became healthy and at full power, the Marines would absolutely try something. "Not saying we wouldn't be able to handle it," but he continued before stopping as Pops cleared his throat and held up his hand a bit to Marco to show he'll finish the rest. "There will come a time where we'll have to fight the Marines for some unknown reason undoubtedly started by them, and things could get rough. That is the moment where I will ask you to do it, as that is when we'll need it the most, but I will promise you, if things get worse with me, I'll ask you ahead of time," Whitebeard told him, the look in the man's eyes showing that he utterly knew what he was talking about, which he didn't doubt, given all the years he's been a pirate. Naruto could only nod, putting his faith in Whitebeard, who knew the seas and own body better than anyone. "Say, could Unruin be used to remove someone's devil fruit?" Ace asked, which instantly got all eyes on Naruto, who honestly hadn't thought about it like that. "Maybe. I mean, in the eyes of the sea, devil fruits aren't natural or something, right?" Naruto asked Pops, as that was what he was told. "I suppose though, for now, let's keep that under wraps. Last thing we need is another potential reason to get the Marines to go after you if it came out," Pops said, laughing a good bit as he could only imagine the chaos that would unfold in Marineford if and when all of Naruto's powers became known to them. Hell, he didn't doubt they were already causing a stir with just the little bit he used against Kizaru. "Enough about that though, I want to celebrate your return as well as you causing waves, so I want to have a feast. Get everyone up from below deck and let's get it started," Whitebeard declared, eliciting cheers from the division commanders who were quick to hurry off Naruto, unaware of the look Whitebeard had given them to get them to clear the room, so to speak. "So I take it some others in Amazon Lily know of your powers?" Whitebeard asked, which made Naruto rub the back of his head sheepishly. Hancock, her sisters, and the elder of the island, but with what I did for them, I'm confident they won't tell a soul, Naruto assured him, looking Pops in the eye before the man nodded to show he believed him. I trust you and who you decide to tell, just be mindful as if the Marines learn of you before we both feel you are ready to set off on your own things'll get dangerous, Whitebeard told him as Naruto nodded in agreement, knowing they absolutely had to be careful. With his fight against Kizaru he got lucky that he was able to keep his hood on using a bit of unchange here and there on the air to keep it secured, but if his face had been seen it would have seriously messed up his plans. This little MIA situation also made me realize something, though thankfully I planned for this ahead of time, Whitebeard said before he tossed him a small bundle of cloth. I had this made for you and it would have arrived in time before you left, but then things got moved ahead of schedule so here, you're getting it now, he explained as Naruto opened the bundle to find a red snail shell a bit bigger than his fist, only for an orange snail to come out of it. But there is a very rare breed of den mushy snail, a one-of-a-kind variant that a friend of mine theorized could be made with enough time and effort and offered it to me to repay a huge debt of his. That is a mix between a normal, baby, and white den mushy snail. It has the long-range calls of a normal one, the portability of a baby, and the wiretap jamming of a white, he continued, while Naruto looked it over. Wow, that's pretty impressive, but why are you giving it to me? Why not use it yourself? Naruto asked, surprised that Whitebeard was giving him something like this, as he waved off his worry with a scoff. You think I care if the Marines eavesdrop on me? I couldn't care less, but I want to be able to contact you if you are out and about without the Marines overhearing and, once you do set off, I want to ensure they don't learn of our connection just yet, he explained, Naruto nodding along as it would definitely be helpful for him down the road. Plus you can use it to talk to your new WOMEN, Whitebeard teased, Naruto nearly dropping the den mushy as he stared at Pops in shock. How do you know? Naruto asked in shock, which only got loud laughter from Pops. I didn't. I was teasing you, kid. You have to learn to keep a poker face when it comes to love, Whitebeard teased in between laughs before he calmed himself down. Though good to know you got more than just allies on your little trip, he added with a rather warm smile, showing he was genuinely happy, just as the commanders and crew members started pouring out from below deck with tables, chairs, and food, while Naruto put away the den mushy. I will say though, kid, be prepared as with all you've done I'm going to push you even harder, so don't think you can relax anytime soon, you hear me? Whitebeard warned, a serious look in his eye that sent a chill of fear and excitement down Naruto's spine. Looking forward to it, Pops, Naruto said with a smile, getting another bout of laughter from his captain as the feast began. About a year and a half later. And I'm not saying I want to storm in there and take him out. I just want to see it. Naruto yelled as he stared down Pops, who was very visibly annoyed at hearing this request for potentially the 100th time. We both know I can be stealthy as well as completely disguise myself, and if worse comes to worse, I can get out of there quickly. He pleaded as over the last year or so he's grown immensely, as not only had he gotten a handle on pretty much all of his powers, but a few months back he learned of another power. He had the power to give rules physical form. It was discovered one day during training where he got seriously frustrated at always being naked after regenerating, and Marco suggested some way for him to regrow clothes. He still couldn't remember what happened next as Pops and the others told him he went into some kind of trance, Pops saying his eyes looked like he was a million miles away and empty as he grabbed a piece of cloth off the ground and held it in his clasped hands. They told him he had said in a voice that sounded odd and almost like his voice had been multiplied, and all said in almost unison, I give you form, rule. Clothing. Next thing they knew, the scrap of cloth was alive with simple eyes and fanged teeth, which then attached itself to him and regenerated his clothing. The rule, according to itself, was the embodiment of the rule of clothing in the world, the rule that dictated that clothing existed and was to be worn. He didn't quite get it, but he, the commanders, and Pops, while sitting around talking it over, figured if he could negate the rules of the world, then he might also have abilities regarding the rules themselves. Though they weren't 100% sure on this, and, for the time being, Pops told him not to try and think too hard about it in case he accidentally made one again, as Clothy, the name they decided for the rule, for the sake of simplicity at the time, that then stuck after a while, told them if he died, then the rule of clothing would disappear from the world. Though Clothy told them he was difficult to kill, especially with him now being bound to a host who was undying. Being bound to Naruto allowed him to replicate any outfit Naruto thought of, and he'd always stick with him, no matter what part he regenerated from. And I'm saying it's too dangerous. Kaido isn't a man you can anger and expect him not to attack. The only reason he holds back fighting me is because he's busy with Wano, so that's why I don't want you going to Wano. Pops yelled back as he slammed his fist down on the railing of his seat, his nurses getting worried for him, but staying back for now. I'm getting sick and tired of you always asking every time we pass by Wano. Either tell me why or I swear I'm going to get actually angry. Pops demanded before Naruto stared him down with fire in his eyes. Fine. You want to know why? Because all I hear about Wano from you and the commanders is how much it sounds like my old home. Naruto yelled back, finally revealing his obsession with Wano, which seemed to instantly snap Pops out of his anger. My home is gone. Everyone I know and love is gone. I know going there won't change that, hell I'm prepared for it to stir up still fresh wounds, but I just feel like I need to see it, he yelled back at him before the emotions kicked in as he stared down Pops, not even caring about his eyes getting a bit watery, as not a day went by that he didn't miss everyone and fear about if they were all still trapped. He knew Kakashi and Sakura died in the explosion, but he prayed that everyone still in the Infinite Tsukiyomi had been freed by Hagoromo, since the man seemed smart enough to plan for the worst. Look Pops, if I could chime in. Ace spoke out, breaking the silence and getting a sigh from Pops who nodded to show he could say whatever he wanted. How about I go with Naruto, just to keep an eye on him and keep him at least a bit more safe than if he went alone. Plus I could, you know, be there for him. He suggested as Pops pinched the bridge of his nose and gave another long sigh. Just, let me think about it, I'm not saying no or yes, but I just understand where you are coming from Naruto Pop said, his voice tired yet calm as Naruto nodded and walked off with Ace about to follow before Pop stopped him and shook his head to silently tell him to give Naruto space for now. Naruto didn't blame Whitebeard, he really didn't as he knew about Kaido and how dangerous he was from stories and having seen his bounty poster, but a part of him screamed how he needed to see Wano. It was hard to describe, but he wanted to believe it might be even the smallest bit like his home in whatever way. Hard for him not to feel that way given the tales of samurai and ninjas he constantly heard from others. You okay boss? Clothy asked, his face appearing on his shoulder once they returned to his room. Yeah no I don't know honestly, Naruto said with a sigh as he sat down on his bed, burying his face in his hands a bit and making a noise that was a mix between a sigh and a groan. Why don't you just sneak off and go on your own? Clothy asked as Naruto fell back on his bed and sighed again. I'm not about to disobey Pops, especially after all that he's done for me. If it wasn't for him I seriously don't know how I'd be right now he told him, knowing Clothy was just trying to help but also knowing he wasn't about to do that to Pops. Most he could hope for is that Pops thought it over and eventually allowed him to go. He didn't care if he had to be handcuffed to someone else to keep an eye on him, he just wanted to finally see Wano. As the days went by it was a bit odd as he wasn't training with the commanders, while Pops oversaw things like he always did. Though he knew Pops wasn't angry since, if anything, training got more intense when Pops was angry or annoyed with him as rare as that was. He somewhat knew not to ask about it as the look in Pop's eyes at times and the look on Marco's face pretty much told him they were really thinking things over and talking about it. Well it's a good thing that he's taking his time thinking it over, isn't it? Hancock asked over his den mushy, her being someone he called often after Whitebeard helped get him her number under the guise of a scuffle between them and a scouting crew. She was quick to catch on, and her scuffle actually helped with her position as warlord a bit, so it worked out well for everyone. Yeah I guess, but it still worries me a bit I guess. I'm not used to Pops being so quiet and all that Naruto muttered with a bit of a frown as he laid back on his bed. Personally I wish he'd just tell me no already, rather than keep me hung out to dry, so to speak he grumbled since he really didn't think he was going to be allowed to go. Sure he is undead and all but risking conflict with Kaido was dangerous for everyone, so he understood where Pops was coming from. Don't be like that dear, there is always the chance he agrees to it. You have several ways to keep off Kaido's radar and he truly does know how much it means to you, Hancock told him in reference to his past as he had opened up to both her and Sandersonia and told them about everything after a few dates of sorts with them both where he'd spend some time with them whenever they were in the new world. The dates were mainly due to how much of a stir it'd cause if the pirate empress was seen with a man out in public on what seemed to be a date in the confines of their ship. Though neither of them minded and they still were able to enjoy themselves. Eventually they'd be able to do stuff in public, but for now this worked and Sandersonia always teased how he'd be able to take them out in public once he became a Yonko. The thought made him chuckle and when he told Pops about it, it made him like Sandersonia a bit more interestingly enough. That's what I want to hope, but Whitebeard is quite protective when it comes to enemies finding out about me. He really goes out of his way to keep it from happening, or at least he did a ton before I got Clothy. You can always keep my face obscured, Naruto told her since having regrowing clothes helped a ton, way more than the makeshift cloak he had before that could only regenerate a bit due to being made of his hair. Then all the more reason that you might be allowed to go. Hancock encouraged, a warm smile appearing on his den mushy before a knock came to his door. Ah, I let you go. Love you my dear Hancock said, frowning a bit that she had to go which made him chuckle a bit as it was cute. Love you too Hancock, tell Sandersonia I said hi and I love her as well he told her, getting a smile and nod from her before she hung up. Done talking with your girlfriend? Ace teased as he opened the door and walked in. "Shut up and tell me what you want," Naruto sighed out as he sat up and gave him a flat look. "I want to know if you are packed," Ace asked, getting a raised eyebrow from Naruto. "I have clothy, I'm literally always packed," Naruto told him as he let clothy eat his den mushi, storing it inside him and keeping it absolutely safe, as clothy could do a bit more than just be his clothing. It turned out that he could also merge existing clothing into him to have it regenerate from damage, store his actual clothing inside him, and even store various items inside him to keep them safe, so long as he didn't die. Marco liked to call clothy a living closet, which wasn't too far off, though Naruto preferred to think of him like a storage scroll for nostalgia's sake. "Good cause you got an outing," Ace told him, outing being what they all used to refer to trips out to islands in search of anything interesting. Targets to pillage, other crews to attack, or even just supply runs to pick up food. "Are you sure, cause you know Pops is the only one who sends me out places," Naruto said, a bit confused as not even other commanders technically had any say over what he did, though not to say they still weren't his superior officers more or less. It was more just Pops wanting to only send him off to keep him safe for now. "Pops cleared it, so just come on, we don't have much time before we leave," Ace urged, grabbing his arm and confusing Naruto even more before Izo, the division commander for the 16th division, walked into the doorway and sighed while shaking his head. "Seems I was right to follow you, Ace, as you really aren't doing a good job at making it clear," Izo said as he put his hand on Ace's shoulder to stop him. Izo was one of the division commanders he was the closest to, besides Ace and Marco, and he was the one who taught him how to shoot guns. He also was the target of most of his questions about Wano, being he was born there and was a former retainer to Oden, the former daimyo of Wano, as well as former 2nd division commander. Thankfully Izo didn't seem to mind most of the time when Wano was brought up and understood his desire to visit given his past. Seeing him here though got Naruto's hopes up a bit as, for the last few days, he had been chatting alone with Pops and Marco. "Making what clear? What's going on?" Naruto asked as he looked back and forth between Ace and Izo, before Izo smiled and put his hand on his shoulder. "Naruto, we are off to Wano and on a short window, so hurry up," Izo told him with a smirk before he turned around and started walking away, Naruto stunned and having to run a bit to catch up with him and Ace once he finally snapped out of his stupor. Wait, seriously?" Naruto asked, having a hard time wrapping his head around it as they walked up the stairs leading up to the deck of the Moby Dick. "I'm giving you 2 weeks in Wano at the most, but I'd rather you not take that long, since we don't know when Kaido and his higher ranks will return," Whitebeard told them as they came up on deck. "I can't spare much of any extra manpower, as moving 2 commanders is already dangerous enough. Ace will be by your side throughout the journey, while Izo is going to be stationed on a small island close to the entrance of Wano to warn you all if Kaido is coming back. If Izo calls, then you are to leave immediately, I don't care what you are doing. You understand?" Whitebeard explained, warning Naruto at the end as he nodded and met Pop's eyes. "I understand, thanks Pops. This really means a lot," Naruto said with a bow, getting a sigh from Whitebeard who waved him off. "Thank Izo since he offered this warning system to ease my worries a bit," he told them as he glanced over to Izo, who was over with Ace preparing Ace's striker, a little raft surfboard thing of sorts that Ace primarily used to sail solo, using his Mara no Mi as a propulsion system alongside the sail. Normally this was a one-person ride due to his flames, but Unburn made that not an issue. "I promise I'll do my best to be safe and not take too long, Pops," Naruto told him. Pops merely nodded and motioned with his head over to the striker to silently tell him to go on and head off. "Just try and taper your expectations, Wano is a shell of its former self due to its current shogun Orochi and Kaido's influence," Izo warned him, Naruto finding it a bit ridiculous that there was another Orochi here that was a terrible person like his Orochimaru back home. He was willing to bet that they also were snake-related in some way, honestly it'd be weirder if they weren't. "I know, I'll do my best to keep things low, but still, I need to see it," Naruto told them as he expected a lot of struggle, but he still felt deep down that he needed to see Wano. "Well, then let's not waste any more time. You got everything ready?" Ace asked with Izo standing near the front of the raft, him silently asking about Unburn with Naruto nodding to show it was active. A quick look over to Pops and a nod from him was all Ace needed for the okay for the raft to get dropped down and immediately fire up and send the raft shooting across the water. Naruto was silent for the ride, his excitement over it made him kind of focus on nothing but what was in front of them. Before he knew it they were at the small island where Izo would be staying on. "Look, if you want to get into Wano you'll have to be careful on these waters as they are always wild and the weather only makes things worse. I recommend using the koi fish that frequent the waterfall to pull your ship up, or you could go full power and soar up the waterfall with your fruit, either way be careful," Izo warned them as Ace nodded and pointed to Naruto. "With him around it should be easy, but we'll be careful," Ace told him as Izo nodded but snapped his fingers to get Naruto's attention. Ace though needs to be covered up a bit as his back might as well be a neon sign, Izo told him as Naruto nodded, agreeing since the massive Whitebeard symbol did make it rather obvious. Good thing I keep spare cloaks and clothing, Naruto said, accepting a bundle of cloth from Clothy before tossing it at Ace, who caught it and put it on begrudgingly. Now just remember what I've told you about Wano and how things are now, and you shouldn't be in too much danger, just try not to cause too much trouble, Izo warned them with a sigh as deep down, he knew no trouble was impossible with the two in front of him. Though at least Naruto tried to avoid trouble. We'll do our best to keep safe and not leave you waiting here too long. If anything pops up we'll call you and do the same if something happens on your end, Naruto said to him as he hopped back onto the striker, a nod from Izo showing he understood and did want to try his best to stay out of danger as best as he could given everything he's heard about it. But that Naruto was excited as they set off, Ace well skilled at driving his striker like someone would a surfboard through the rapids around Wano. I see the koi fish, Izo mentioned, though he failed to mention how huge they are, Naruto said with a chuckle as he crouched down on the front of the striker to get a better view of them and just how massive they were. Since I can't use two powers at once, I'll hop onto one and connect us through a rope of unchanging air, he decided, Ace giving a thumbs up to show he was down with the plan as Naruto hopped off and onto a koi. Secure it to the front of the striker and try to keep it loose so I can move easier. Ace yelled out as Naruto put a collar of unchanging air around the fish's neck, which also trapped his feet to keep him secure and float a leash of air over to the striker. Surfing on a huge fish while it scaled a waterfall was definitely intense but also incredibly fun, Ace is laughing and cheering behind him, showing he also was enjoying it just as much. It didn't take long to scale the waterfall, Naruto leaping off the fish once it leapt into the air and landing back on the striker before using Unchanged to make a ramp of air for it to shoot down on and back into the water. Though the water was as chaotic as Izo had warned, as the second they dropped down into the water, a massive whirlpool formed under them. The waters kept nullifying Ace's flames that he tried to shoot out to sail out of the whirlpool, and since Unchanged would only suffocate them due to Ace's fire, burning all the oxygen, he tried his best to use it on the water. That wasn't really able to be done as they were spinning around way too quickly and next thing they were underwater. He tried his best to hold onto Ace and fight through the drowning, but even then there was only so much he could do before he lost consciousness. With Undead, it didn't take long for him to wake back up, finding himself tied up in some village with Ace tied up beside him. The village seemed to be completely surrounded and hidden in a forest, with all the roofs of the buildings made of woven straw and the villagers seemingly robbing them of the food that had been packed in Ace's striker. It was incredibly obvious they were starving, some of the adults having hollow cheeks, while some of the kids crying tears of joy as they accepted food from those very same hollow-cheeked adults. Let's wait until they are done eating, if we break out now they'll stop eating, Ace told him, showing he was awake as Naruto gave a slight nod, not quite wanting to startle the villagers despite some people already noticing they were awake. I was thinking the same thing, bro, this place has it rough and the last we can do is feed them a bit, Naruto said with a smile as they continued to watch. So, I take it you helped keep us alive, Clothy? He asked as Clothy's face appeared on his shirt. I merged with Ace's cloak to keep you two together, and once the water calmed down I turned into life jackets to make you both float. I will say it's quite annoying to play dead around them when they tied you up, Clothy explained with a grumble, as Naruto pretty much forbid him from showing himself to others unless introduced to keep things hidden. It's fine, Clothy, they need the food more than we do, Naruto told him, Clothy understanding as he disappeared for now, and the two of them continued to watch as the villagers ate their food. You think you could use one of your powers to help them out a bit? Ace asked as Naruto hummed in thought, trying to think which power could work with their situation. What did you have in mind, cause I could unruin some stuff for them, Naruto said while he looked around, noticing some buildings he could probably patch up and maybe fix the water around them, though he wasn't sure how long that would last if it was being actively polluted. Didn't you figure out a new one recently? Undecent or something? Ace asked, which got a sigh from Naruto. Undecrease, and it only negates the decrease in ammo so I can fire weapons without needing to reload, so I don't quite see how that'll help them, Naruto said before Ace shook his head and sighed. Naruto, you look at things way too narrowly, you have to look at the bigger picture. Ace said in an intense whisper. Decrease should apply to more than just bullets. If you have a food supply and you eat some, are you not decreasing the supply? Come on, with all those crazy powers you sure do limit yourself more than you should, he explained to him, Naruto hanging his head and shaking it a bit as if his hands weren't bound, he would have slammed his palm into his face. Ace, has anyone told you you're a genius? Naruto asked as he chuckled, smiling a huge smile as he stood up and Clothy helped remove the ropes. Come with me, I have some food to restore, he added, getting Ace to stand up with a smile of his own as he burned through the ropes. The villagers were obviously on guard, the adults shielding the kids and those with weapons quick to draw them. The two of them didn't react to it, Naruto merely smiling at them as he carefully held out a hand for the sack that used to hold all their food. Here, how about I get you guys some more, Naruto offered, calmly looking into the man's eyes to show he wasn't angry, nor was he going to hurt them, which seemed to be enough to get him to hand over the bag and to get everyone to loosen up just a bit. This bag of food was mine, and it has been decreased, so this should work as it's on decrease, this should work on any decrease. He repeated over and over in his head as he stared intently on the bag, a smile breaking out as he watched the food reappear in the bag. Yes. It worked. Ace cheered as he patted Naruto hard on the back. See? Just gotta widen your view of the word, he said with a smirk before Naruto crouched down and held out the bag to the kid hiding behind the adult in front of him. Here you go, I can tell you are still hungry, so eat up, Naruto told him, smiling as the kid and other kids slowly came out from behind the adults. Also, I want the adults here to eat too, I can make more than enough food for everyone, as long as you all don't get sick of the same stuff. None of you will be doing your children any good by starving yourself to death, so eat up, he added, getting the adults to slowly come over as well, though still letting the kids go first to ensure they still got some food first. It took a while, and a couple refills of the sack of food and their jugs of clean water, but eventually everyone was able to eat their fill, which in turn allowed Ace and him to eat a bit as well, since drowning had been rough on their stomachs. So, you the head of the village? Ace asked as Naruto bit into an apple, looking over at the odd man who wore a mask of a Tengu and also dressed like one, wings and all. This village has no leader, merely a few samurai who still protect these lands. My name is Tengayama Hitetsu, and I am merely asking, why are you pirates acting like this? Hitetsu asked, his eyes making it clear he didn't trust them fully, though Naruto didn't blame him given things. Why not? Naruto responded as he used undecreased to restore the apple, before handing it over to a little girl nearby who he noticed had been eyeing it. You guys are starving and I have the ability to solve it. I might be a pirate, but I'm also the kind to go out of my way to help anyone I can, since no one should go hungry, especially kids, he further explained as he ruffled the hair of the girl who finally accepted his apple. What's your name? Mine's Naruto and he's Ace, he asked as he crouched down to the girl's height level, motioning to Ace, who gave a little wave and a smile to the girl. Atama, and thank you very much, Naruto, Atama said with a sweet and happy smile on her perma-blush face, before she gave a deep bow to him and rushed off to eat her apple. I understand your feelings towards pirates, especially given everything Wano has been going through, but I promise you we don't mean any danger, Naruto assured the man, standing up and meeting his eyes as they stared at one another before the man finally nodded. Then we'll lend you to a small shack, it won't be much since most of our houses are in rather disrepair, but it's the least we can do after you fed us all, Hitetsu said as Ace snapped his fingers as he remembered something. Naruto can help with that, he's good at fixing stuff, so it's not like either of us will just be sitting around doing nothing while we stay here for a week or two, Ace reminded him, Naruto nodding as he patted his chest. You tell us what we can do to help and we'll do our best, he told the man as he flexed his arm and patted his bicep, as if to say, I've got it, all we ask in exchange is pretty much what you've already done, letting us stay here while we are in Wano, he said with a smile, Hitetsu only shaking his head and unable to keep a smirk off his face. Such odd pirates just try not to cause too much trouble, Hitetsu told them before walking off to leave them be. So, want to rush through fixing everything so we can go explore Wano? Ace asked, getting a big smile from Naruto as he set down the refilled bag of food on the ground. You read my mind, brother, let's get started, he excitedly said back, eager to meet more people and stealthily help where he can help. If anything, this'll help him know where to go and what to do when he eventually came back with his own crew. After all, he planned to defeat all the Yonko to establish his standing in the seas, and what better way to defeat Kaido than to kick him out of Wano and fix the place. Though that was all in the future, for now he had to remind himself to focus on the now, and right now, he had buildings to fix and Wano to explore. Chapter end. What if Naruto beat a celestial dragon in One Piece harem? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.